Chapter 648. Xiaochen looked at Jingyu's hair and his face darkened. He decisively gave up and put the hairpin back in Jingyu's hand. Every time he saw the maidservants doing the hair bun, it was so easy. Why was it so difficult for him to do it? Jingyu raised her hand to do a simple bun and said, "Let's go. If we are late, it will be too late." Xiaochen looked at Jingyu's hair and silently made a decision. The next time he saw those maidservants, he must ask them how they did it. In Yangzhou City, Jingyu and Xiaochen led Qinggu and the others out of the restaurant quietly. They walked along the alley and wandered towards the pier by the sea. Although the sky was dark, there were still many people. When they got close to the pier, the number of people decreased. The ships from Yangzhou to Meizhou would definitely not set out at night. However, how could those private fleets not set out before they were given enough money? Jingyu and Xiaochen looked around the pier and frowned slightly. Looking at the situation, could it be that there were no ships? Just when Jingyu and Xiaochen were puzzled, they suddenly saw a figure walking out from the side of the road. It was a fat and burly figure. She was holding a zither in her hand. It seemed that she had just returned from somewhere to learn the zither. Jingyu naturally recognized this person. Wasn't it the fat girl who went up on the stage during the day? The girl raised her head and saw Jingyu and Xiaochen. She seemed to be slightly startled. Then she politely nodded to Jingyu and the others and walked around them. Jingyu looked at the fat girl's panting figure. Her footsteps felt so heavy. Mississippi, she didn't know what she was thinking, but Jingyu suddenly raised her voice and called out to her. "Miss, are you calling me?" The fat girl seemed to be startled by Jingyu. She looked around doubtfully, then raised her fat finger and pointed to the tip of her nose. "Exactly." Jingyu nodded slightly and looked at Qinggu. "You saw the problem, didn't you?" Although Qinggu didn't understand why Jingyu stopped the woman, he understood after hearing Jingyu's question. Jingyu was right. There was indeed something wrong with this woman's body. "Miss, I am a doctor." Qinggu bowed slightly to the fat girl and said, "Miss, may I take a look at your pulse?" "What? I'm not sick." The girl seemed to be a little frightened. Then, she looked at Jingyu and Qinggu vigilantly. There was a hint of caution in her eyes. "Miss, don't be afraid. I don't mean anything else." Jingyu lowered her head and said helplessly, "Don't you feel that your body is uncomfortable? If I'm not wrong, you weren't like this in the past. You must have started overeating a few years ago, causing you to become like this, right?" "How do you know?" The fat girl was shocked. She looked at Jingyu with fear and asked, "What do you mean by that? Do I have some kind of illness?" "If you want to know, let him take your pulse." Jingyu raised her chin slightly at the girl. The girl seemed to hesitate for a moment, then sighed and said, "I don't think I have anything for you to ask. Just take a look." Chapter 649. After saying that, the woman extended her hand for Qinggu to check her pulse. Qinggu only touched her wrist slightly before withdrawing his hand. "Miss, you're sick." Qinggu bowed slightly to the woman and said, "Originally, it was because of the medicine that caused your appetite to increase. Now, it's because you've developed this habit of overeating. If you can control it, you'll be cured." "What do you mean? What medicine?" The woman looked at Qinggu with a dazed expression and asked. "It should be because you ate something when you were 13 or 14. You ate it continuously for 3 or 4 months. That's when you started overeating. Am I right?" Qinggu frowned slightly and said, "This is a harmful act. It's ruined by a girl like you." "Miss, did you offend someone?" Jingyu raised her head slightly and saw that the woman's face had turned pale. 13 or 14 years old, white fungus soup, 3 or 4 months. The woman murmured word by word, "So it's her. My most beloved junior sister, but, Miss, your zither skills are unparalleled in the world. I helped you today because I was impressed by your zither skills at the music workshop." Jingyu looked at the woman and said indifferently, "I look forward to passing by Yangzhou next year and seeing Mrs. Peerless Elegance again. Trample those who look down on you under your feet." Jingyu smiled faintly at the woman and turned to leave with Qinggu. The woman stood there in a daze for a long time. Her heart was violently shaken. When she saw that Jingyu was far away, She suddenly came back to her senses and shouted, "Miss, what's your name?" Jing Yu and Xiao Chen had already jumped onto a boat. They didn't answer the woman's shout. The woman stood there in a daze and watched the boat slowly move towards the center of the sea. She stood at the dock for a long time and was unable to come back to her senses. Her heart was filled with complicated feelings. On the medium-sized boat, Jing Yu looked at the fat woman standing under the lights and smiled faintly. "Why are you so interested in helping her?" Xiao Chen stood beside Jing Yu and tilted his head slightly to look at her. "I wanted to help, so I helped." Jing Yu looked up at Xiao Chen and said, "I don't know why, but I can feel that even if this woman doesn't receive my help today, she'll be famous in the future. I'm just taking advantage of her and being a good person." "Ah." Xiao Chen raised his hand and wrapped around Jing Yu's shoulder and said, "At least you can make her famous 2 years earlier." "It doesn't matter." Jing Yu turned to Xiao Chen and said, "How long will it take to get to Meizhou from here?" 3 or 4 days at most, 2 days at least." Xiao Chen raised his hand and patted Jing Yu's head. "Then we can have a good sleep." Jing Yu smiled and walked cheerfully towards the cabin on the boat. This was the first time she had seen the sea after transmigrating for so long. However, because it was too dark, there was no scenery to see. Jing Yu decisively chose to go back to sleep. Because of Xiao Chen, Jing Yu hadn't been able to get a good night's sleep. That night, Jing Yu slept comfortably. When Jing Yu woke up naturally, it was already the next morning. The boat was a bit swaying, so Jing Yu wasn't used to it and woke up after a while. Chapter 650. Jing Yu put on her clothes, rubbed her sleepy eyes, and walked out of the room. The sunlight outside was a little dazzling. Jing Yu squinted her eyes and looked up. Under the wind of the sea, a slender figure stood on the deck. Xing Yi stood behind Xiao Chen. Xing Yi seemed to be reporting something to Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen frowned slightly and waved his hand lightly. Xing Yi lowered his head and turned to leave. Xing Yi turned around and saw Jing Yu standing behind him. Just as he was about to greet her, Jing Yu glared at him and gestured for him to keep quiet. Xing Yi nodded in understanding and quietly retreated to the side. Jing Yu tiptoed and controlled her breathing. She carefully walked toward Xiao Chen. Then, when she was close to Xiao Chen, she pounced and hung onto Xiao Chen's back. Xiao Chen held onto Jing Yu and looked at Jing Yu expressionlessly. Hey, why don't you have any reaction? Do you have eyes on the back of your head? Do you know it's me?" Jing Yu stared at him and poked Xiao Chen's cheek. "Yeah," Xiao Chen replied faintly and put Jing Yu down from his back. "You really have eyes. Let me see. Jing Yu said and was about to pry open the back of Xiao Chen's head to see what was going on. Xiao Chen's face darkened. He grabbed Jing Yu's hand and said, "I heard you open the door." "Your ears are quite useful," Jing Yu said with a smile as she tugged on Xiao Chen's ear. Xiao Chen was speechless at Jing Yu's behavior. He pulled Jing Yu to a chair and sat down. He squinted at the sparkling water and didn't say anything. Jing Yu sighed in admiration as she looked at the blue sea. In a daze, she seemed to recall a distant memory. Back then, in the modern era, she had gone out to sea to complete a mission. In order to complete the mission, she had hidden herself in the sea in the -10°C weather. After the victory, she had drunk and celebrated with her teammates on the ship. That distant memory touched Jing Yu's heart for a moment. Is this your first time seeing the sea?" Xiao Chen, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly asked. "Does seeing it in a dream count?" Jing Yu propped up her chin and said, "The sea in my dream looks exactly the same as the sea here." Xiao Chen responded faintly and didn't say anything else. He rested his head on his hands and closed his eyes as if he was enjoying the sea breeze. Jing Yu tilted her head and looked at Xiao Chen's profile. Her eyes flashed with a hint of struggle. Should she tell Xiao Chen about her past and her origins? If she did, what would Xiao Chen's reaction be? Jing Yu frowned slightly and looked away. She didn't see Xiao Chen's slightly opened eyes. His gaze was a little doubtful and a little expectant. In the end, he returned to silence and continued to close his eyes. He didn't say a word. What did Xing Yi say just now? After a long silence, Jing Yu thought that Xiao Chen had fallen asleep. She asked tentatively, There's news. The sea area we need to pass through is not safe, Xiaochen said faintly. Not safe? Jingyu was taken aback when she heard this. She asked, could it be that the sacred race has already reached the surface of the sea? Xiaochen slowly sat up and said, in half a day's journey, we will enter an area where pirates are prevalent. Yangzhou's navy went out to clean up, but the results didn't seem to be good. The boatman's original intention was to bypass this area, but if we did, we would have to go through another place. It is very likely that we will be stopped by the navy. Chapter 651. So we're going to cross this pirate zone? Jingyu frowned slightly. She stood up and looked at the ship. There's nothing on this ship. How are we going to defend against pirates? If there are pirates, we'll be in trouble. It's no trouble at all. Xiaochen said calmly, let's change the flag to the flag of the Nether sect. I think those pirates are quite knowledgeable. Jingyu was slightly stunned. She looked at Xiaochen's arrogant face and wanted to pinch it. How could this guy be so cute? Jingyu thought so she did as she should. Jingyu pinched Xiaochen's face seriously. Xiaochen's body stiffened slightly. He turned to look at Jingyu. Jingyu blinked blankly and looked at her hand. Suddenly, she froze. She was annoyed. Just as she was about to withdraw her hand, Xiaochen raised his hand and grabbed it. Jingyu looked up at Xiaochen. Xiaochen's eyes darkened slightly. He raised his hand and pulled Jingyu into his embrace. Every time Jingyu did something to him, Xiaochen's heart couldn't help but tremble. Xiaochen looked at Jingyu with a burning gaze. Jingyu blushed slightly. She looked at Xiaochen and sighed in her heart. She couldn't do anything to this man. Jingyu responded and obediently leaned toward Xiaochen. She kissed Xiaochen's cheek and leaned against his chest. She listened to the warm heartbeat from Xiaochen's chest and smiled faintly. Your heartbeat is the same as mine. Xiaochen smiled and hugged Jingyu tightly in his arms without saying a word. The ship sailed for half a day, and as expected, the flag on the ship had been changed to the flag of the Nether sect. However, the surrounding waters did not change. After sailing for half a day, they did not see a single pirate. Could it be that Jingyu was lucky this time? The legendary pirates had all gone home to sleep? Jingyu leaned against the railing of the deck for a long time, but couldn't see anything. She rubbed the tip of her nose, which had turned red from the wind, and yawned as she turned back to her room. What Jingyu didn't know was that somewhere in the deep sea, there was a figure swimming in the water. A small head popped out and squinted at the ship for a long time. In the end, it held its breath and dived back into the water, disappearing in an instant. On a certain island, there were people dressed strangely. They were either standing or sitting. Some of them were talking in a circle. There weren't many people, but it was very lively. In the middle of this group of people, there was a man wearing dark red clothes sitting in the middle. The wide chair was covered with a cloth. The man's black hair was draped over his shoulders. There were a few strands of white hair in front of his head. The hair covered the man's face. The man's head was lowered. He seemed to be sleeping or resting with his eyes closed. Bus. There's movement. A figure ran over excitedly. As he ran, he pinched his clothes and shouted, "The water monkey is back. What did you find?" Everyone stood up and asked excitedly when they heard the shouts. "There's a ship coming." The person called Water Monkey wiped the water off his face and excitedly rushed to the side of the man in the crimson robe and said. When the man heard this, he moved his body and slowly raised his head. His handsome face was revealed. One of his eyes was covered with a silver eye patch. Only one eye was open. He looked at the water monkey and asked, "What ship is this?" Chapter 652. Boss, I'm afraid we can't move this boat. The water monkey scratched his head in annoyance and said, "It's the Nether sect's boat. I don't know why the Nether sect's people would come out to sea." Nether sect? The king of hell's boat? The man in the dark red clothes moved his body lazily, revealing his muscular chest. There were 2 knife scars on his chest. He wore a pair of dark black gloves. One of his eyes was slightly narrowed, and the corner of his mouth curved into a cruel smile. The king of hell is finally willing to come out? The man laughed loudly. His eyes flashed with a fierce light as he said, "They all say that the King of Hell is not to be trifled with. Today, I want to see just how powerful the King of Hell is. Brothers, take your weapons. The King of Hell's head is mine. Roar, roar, roar. Boss is mighty." When the crowd heard the man's words, they immediately cheered enthusiastically. The sea was as calm as ever. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen had already returned to their rooms to sleep. The sky was dark, and the sea breeze was even louder. Looking at the weather, it seemed like it was going to be a windy day. After staying on the boat for a day, Jing Yu was already quite familiar with it. She didn't feel uncomfortable at all. It wasn't her first time on a boat, so she got used to it quickly. Jing Yu rested her head on Xiao Chen's arm. Just as she was sleeping, the boat that was moving smoothly suddenly shook violently. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen were startled and sat up. Looking at the shaking boat, they frowned slightly. "What's going on?" Jing Yu asked with a frown. "I'm afraid we've hit something," Xiao Chen said as he stood up. He quickly put on his clothes and said calmly, "I'll go out and take a look." Jing Yu watched Xiao Chen leave. After hesitating for a moment, she also stood up and changed her clothes. She opened the door and walked out. The boat's lanterns were lit. From afar, she seemed to hear the boatman telling Xiao Chen that they might have hit a reef and that he was sending people down to investigate. Jing Yu frowned slightly and looked up into the distance. The surface of the sea was dark. Jing Yu walked to the side of the ship and bent down slightly to look down. All she could hear was the sound of flowing water, but she didn't see a single person. Just as Jing Yu was about to look away, her ears twitched. Suddenly, she heard the sound of something hitting the wooden planks. Her face turned cold and she bent down to look again. This time, Jing Yu didn't look away. Instead, she frowned and focused. In the night, Jing Yu's black eyes suddenly turned green. Jing Yu could see the sea clearly now. Jing Yu narrowed her eyes. The sound in her ears became clearer and clearer, and the scene in front of her became clearer. Under Jing Yu's gaze, she suddenly saw a human figure swim to the bottom of the boat like a fish. Jing Yu's eyes suddenly shrank and turned black. She turned her head and shouted, "There's someone in the water." Jing Yu had just finished speaking when the boat shook violently again. This time, the shaking was even more violent. At this moment, a cry of alarm came from afar. "Not good. The bottom of the boat is broken. Water is entering the boat." What? Xiao Chen's face suddenly turned cold. He quickly walked to Jing Yu's side and squinted his eyes to look at the sea. "Find someone to fix the bottom of the boat and call someone to guard the deck." Jing Yu looked up at Xiao Chen and said. Just as Jing Yu was about to say something, she suddenly saw a boat slowly appear on the surface of the sea. Chapter 653. The ship was too far away. It was impossible to see what was written on it. Moreover, it was nighttime. "It's here." Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes slightly. He looked at the slowly approaching ship with a cold glint in his eyes. The ship shook even more violently. Everyone ran to the bottom of the bed to fix the hole. However, the hole could not be fixed no matter how hard they tried. The wind on the surface of the sea was getting stronger and stronger, and the fog was getting thicker. The ship seemed to be moving forward. It was obvious that something was dragging the ship under the water. "Sir, we can't do it. The ship is sinking." A few young men ran over and shouted anxiously. "Quick, put down the boat." The boatman's face turned pale when he heard that. He hastily said, "Take the small boat and leave quickly before those pirates get close." Everyone hurriedly ran to the side. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen stood where they were, looking at the ship that was slowly approaching them from afar. Their eyes were grave. Seeing the flag on the ship, they knew it was the ship of the Nether sect. Yet they still dared to have designs on it. It seemed that this person was not a kind person. A silver lightning bolt struck down from the sky. Thunder rumbled. Everyone on the deck fled in all directions. Raindrops mixed with the strong wind fell. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen ran to the place where the small boats were lowered. One after another, small boats were lowered to the surface of the sea with ropes. Everyone slid down the boats and sat on them. However, when the person who sat on the boat rowed a short distance, several figures suddenly emerged from the water. They shouted and overturned the boat in an instant. This is bad. There are people in the water. The boatman looked at the person who fell into the water. It was as though he was pulled into the water by something. He did not have time to resist at all. We can't leave. Xiao Chun turned his head slightly and looked at the ship that was getting closer and closer. He finally saw the pattern on the ship's sail. It was a tattered flag with a sword and a skull on it. The pattern was somewhat similar to the pattern of Xiao Chen's nether society. The ship was sinking rapidly, and the hull was beginning to tilt. The wind and rain were getting stronger. As the pirate ship approached, many sailors and those who knew how to swim jumped into the water and disappeared. No one knew if they were dead or alive. Jingyu looked up and saw the approaching ship. On the tattered ship, there were people wearing strange clothes and holding shiny big swords in their hands. As the two ships approached, Jingyu could hear the enthusiastic cries of the pirates amidst the wind and rain. Damn! There are women! Excited cries rang out. The bandits swung the ropes in their hands toward Jingyu and Xiao Chen's ship. They tied the ropes to the ship's pole and jumped onto the deck. Xiao Chen looked coldly at the approaching figures. He narrowed his eyes and stared at the opposite ship as though he was looking for something. Jingyu looked up at Xiao Chen. Her eyes were filled with questions. Kill! Xiao Chen stood with his hands behind his back. Even at a moment like this where they could die at any time, Xiao Chen's face did not change at all. He tilted his head slightly and spat out two words. Xing Yi, who was standing behind Xiao Chen, bowed slightly and narrowed his eyes coldly. Chapter 654. He unsheathed the long sword at his waist and dashed toward the pirates like a ghost. All the black-clothed men moved out one after another, silently charging toward the pirates. The pirates on the other side saw this scene clearly, and their eyes were filled with fear. The pirates tightened their grip on the ropes in their hands, but they didn't dare to fly over. A few of them looked at each other, and hesitation appeared in their eyes. The pirates on this ship weren't simple people, and the subordinates of the Nether sect weren't idle people either. They couldn't win with brute force, and they couldn't bear to see their brothers throw their lives away. One of them raised his hand and shouted to stop the people who wanted to go over. He stood on the deck of the pirate ship and seemed to be talking. Damn it! Let's fight it out with them. Use the ship to ram them and sink them. Once we're in the water, it's our world. That's right, that's right. The crowd echoed one after another, and shouts rang out again. The pirate ship looked shabby, but the hull was surrounded by sharpened wooden stakes. It fiercely rammed toward Jingyu and Xiao Chen's ship. The ship shook violently, and Jingyu and Xiao Chen couldn't stand still. Xiao Chen raised his hand to grab Jingyu, but because the ship was shaking too violently, Xiao Chen slid to one side. Jingyu's body swayed, and she almost fell off the deck. Xiao Chen's heart suddenly shrank when he saw this. Fortunately, Jingyu's eyes were sharp, and she quickly pulled out her dagger and stabbed it deeply into the ship's hull. Damn pirates! The rain wet Jingyu's veil, and it stuck to her face, making her feel uncomfortable. Jingyu's eyes flashed with a fierce light, and she raised her hand to tear off the veil on her face. Xing Yi, give me the bow and arrows. Jingyu steadied herself and coldly shouted at Xing Yi, who wasn't far away. Xing Yi was slightly stunned. He lowered his head and saw the longbow and quiver at his feet. He hooked the longbow with the tip of his foot, and raised his hand to throw it at Jingyu. Xiao Chen saw Jingyu's action, and he slightly tilted his head to look at the pirate ship. When the pirates saw that the ship ramming seemed to have a good effect, they immediately cheered and prepared for the second ramming. Jingyu suddenly raised the longbow in her hand. She knocked an arrow and pointed it straight at the approaching pirate ship. The cold tip of the arrow carried a bloodthirsty murderous aura. In this rainy night, the woman stood at the bow of the ship. Just as the pirate ship was about to approach, the woman who was soaked in water stood there. Jingyu's eyes turned cold, and the arrow in her hand flew out. Without any obstruction, it directly hit the heart of the man standing in the middle, killing him in one blow. The man didn't even have the slightest reaction, nor did he feel any pain before he stopped breathing. Xuan Er. The power of this arrow was too great, and no one could react in time. They saw with their own eyes that the person who was commanding them a moment ago had his heart pierced by an arrow. Their eyes were filled with fear, and they looked up. When they saw that on the deck, a petite woman slowly lowered the longbow in her hand, their expressions became strange. "Quickly go find the boss," one of them shouted. The petite man responded, quickly stood up, and quickly ran towards the ship's cabin. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen were on the ship, and the bow of the ship began to sink rapidly. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen looked at each other with fear in their eyes. Looking at the rolling waves, Jing Yu frowned. If this continued, they would definitely fall into the sea. Chapter 655. Let's go down. Xiao Chen tightened his grip on Jing Yu's hand. Both of them held onto the railing tightly as they watched the sailors and boatmen fall into the sea. Some of them even had their chests pierced by falling logs, causing them to faint. Jing Yu clenched her fists slightly and looked up at the pirate ship. She flipped over and stood on the railing at the bow of the ship. She watched with her own eyes as the ship sank bit by bit. On the opposite pirate ship, a slender figure slowly stepped out. The figure that suddenly appeared was obviously the pirate leader of this group of bandits. In the dark night, he wore dark red clothes and seemed to be talking to someone beside him. Jing Yu's eyes turned cold. Looking at his appearance, he was actually a pirate leader. "Xiao Chen, the ship is sinking. I'm afraid it's not safe to stay in the sea." Jing Yu looked at Xiao Chen and said, "Don't let go of my hand." Xiao Chen looked at Jing Yu indifferently. His 10 fingers were tightly clenched. "Okay." Jing Yu nodded. Xiao Chen and Xing Yi glanced at each other. Xing immediately understood Xiao Chen's meaning and nodded slightly. He walked to the side and pulled Qinggu, who was being protected by Jing Lang. Jing Lang also jumped onto the railing at the bow of the ship. "Help! Ah!" Qingyi was dragged onto the railing at the head of the bed by Interrogation Officer 1. His face instantly turned pale with fright, and he wailed like a ghost as he hugged the pole in his hands tightly, refusing to let go. "Big brother, don't let go of Qinggu. We have to abandon the ship." Jing Yu raised her voice and shouted to Jing Lang. "After getting off the ship, don't swim too far. Hold your breath and swim to the bottom of the sea. Once you dive deeper, swim further. That way, those people won't be able to catch us." "Okay." Jing Lang nodded. "But I can't hold it in for that long." Qinggu immediately started crying. He hugged the pole in his hand tightly and said, "Ninth brother, why don't you go talk to your pirate leader?" I'm willing to surrender." Jing Yu's face darkened. What a good-for-nothing. Just as Jing Yu was discussing, the pirate ship once again slammed into the hull of the ship. Jing Yu suddenly lost her grip. Xiao Chen's eyes turned cold, and he pulled Jing Yu into his embrace. The two of them hugged each other tightly and fell towards the sea. The King of Hell is actually protecting a woman. On the pirate ship, a man in dark red clothes let out a cry of surprise. He clearly saw Xiao Chen falling into the sea with Jing Yu in his arms. "Boss, what do we do now?" A person beside the man asked. "Let the water monkey bring people into the sea." The man lazily curled the corners of his mouth and said, "It doesn't matter if the King of Hell can't catch them. I want that woman." Boss is finally eating meat? When everyone heard the man's words, they immediately roared with laughter. They rubbed their fists and said, "Boss has taken a fancy to the King of Hell's woman. We brothers have to snatch her no matter what." That's right. Let's go into the sea." Boss, wait for us brothers to help you snatch her back." "Let's go." One figure after another jumped into the sea with cheers. The figures that entered the sea were like fish that entered the water, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Their nimble movements and teasing words made the man standing on the ship with his hands behind his back smile faintly. Chapter 656. It was pitch black in the cold sea. Jing Yu's eyes changed slightly. Her dark green eyes were dazzling in the water. Xiao Chen held Jing Yu's hand tightly and dived down to the bottom of the sea. There was no one around them at first, but when Jing Yu was about to swim upstream, countless figures suddenly swam towards them from afar. The figures of those people were particularly different. Their swimming speed in the water was many times faster than Jing Yu's. This situation made Jing Yu's heart tremble slightly. Xiao Chen held Jing Yu's hand and swam even faster. He pulled out his dagger and was ready to fight at any time. The black figures were getting closer and closer. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen were forced to stop. They watched as those people blocked the way out for Jing Yu and Xiao Chen. Then they used hand gestures that they couldn't understand at all. One after another, they attacked Jing Yu and Xiao Chen. Jing Yu clenched the dagger in her hand and fought back. However, because one of her hands was held by Xiao Chen, she couldn't move her body flexibly. She frowned slightly. Xiao Chen seemed to be restrained because of this. Jing Yu wanted to let go of her hand, but Xiao Chen held it even tighter. Xiao Chen made a hand gesture to Xiao Chen. She didn't care whether Xiao Chen could understand it or not. She broke free from Xiao Chen's hand and quickly swam in a direction. It was quite difficult for her to wave the dagger in her hand in the water. Fortunately, Jing Yu could also use the water to push herself away. She had been in the water for too long. She had to swim to the surface. However, just as Jing Yu was about to swim upstream, she found that everyone was holding back Xiao Chen. Jing Yu's heart tightened. She quickly turned around and swam back. Xiao Chen anxiously waved at Jing Yu, indicating that Jing Yu should go first. He would hold them back. Jing Yu wouldn't let Xiao Chen do that. She quickly slit a person's throat and grabbed Xiao Chen's hand again. She seemed to want to push Xiao Chen to the surface. However, her sharp eyes saw that Xiao Chen's back was bleeding. The blood was very obvious in the water. The stagnant qi in her chest became more obvious. Just as Jing Yu was anxious, she suddenly saw Xing Yi swimming quickly from not far away. She was happy. She pulled Xiao Chen and swam quickly for a distance. Suddenly, she swung Xiao Chen's head and blocked Xiao Chen's mouth. She transferred the remaining qi in her mouth into Xiao Chen's mouth. The pirates behind her followed like a shadow. Xiao Chen was stunned by Jing Yu's actions. His eyes suddenly showed fear. He seemed to have noticed Jing Yu's actions. He raised his hand to grab Jing Yu. However, Jing Yu dodged and pushed Xiao Chen fiercely in the direction of Xing. In the sea, Xiao Chen saw Jing Yu's figure moving away from him. He stretched out his hand to grab Jing Yu. However, all he could grab was the water behind him. Run! In the sea, Jing Yu opened her mouth and shouted. She allowed the seawater to enter her mouth and nose. She saw Xing Yi dragging Xiao Chen with a shocked expression. She saw Xiao Chen struggling to swim over but was dragged away by Xing Yi. Jing Yu slowly breathed a sigh of relief. The pirates behind her caught up. Jing Yu used the last of her strength to stab a few of them. Finally, when she saw that Xiao Chen and Xing Yi had disappeared, the ink-black dagger in her hand slowly fell and sank to the bottom of the sea. Jing Yu's eyes were slightly open as her figure slowly sank to the bottom of the sea. In the last moments of Jing Yu's consciousness, she saw the pirates who were originally chasing after her suddenly come forward and drag her upstream. Chapter 657. At that moment, Jing Yu was filled with regret. If I had known that you weren't here to kill me, I wouldn't have jumped into the sea. I would have just left with you. Jing Yu's consciousness finally sank into the boundless darkness at this moment. The ink-black dagger sank for a long, long time before finally falling to the bottom of the sea. It fell on the sand, splashing up bits of fine sand. The sea regained its tranquility. With so many corpses, the smell of blood attracted a large number of fish. There was no need for anyone to clean up the corpses, as the fish would have already eaten them clean. Jing Yu woke up amidst the noise. The chatter was so noisy that Jing Yu's head was throbbing with pain. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore and opened her eyes. The glaring sunlight made Jing Yu feel uncomfortable for a moment. She blinked her black eyes in confusion. I'm not dead. This was probably the first sentence that came to Jing Yu's mind in that instant. Little miss is awake. Jing Yu began to wonder where she was. Suddenly, she heard cries of surprise from the side of the bed. 4 to 5 heads gathered in front of Jing Yu, looking at Jing Yu with surprise and curiosity. Their mouths were full of joy as they cheered. Quick, 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 quickly report this to young master. As Jing Yu spoke, she saw the other 2 young ladies running out of the room excitedly. Jing Yu rubbed her aching eyebrows and sat up with her arms propped up. The remaining two ladies hurriedly went forward to cushion Jing Yu. Their eyes were filled with surprise as they said, "Miss, do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Are you hungry? Is there anything you want to eat?" Jing Yu was silent. She looked at the young lady indifferently, then turned to look at this unfamiliar place. Looking at the decorations in this room, everything was neat and tidy. Strangely, Jing Yu's sharp eyes saw a piece of clothing on the screen. A man's clothing. Oh my God! Could this room be a man's room? "Miss, what is your relationship with our young master?" The young lady seemed to have been holding it in for a long time. She couldn't help but ask, "Young master carried you back and even let you stay in his house. It's so blissful." That's right, that's right. "Miss, what's your name?" the two girls asked excitedly. Jing Yu's face darkened and her body stiffened. If Xiaochen found out that she had slept in another man's bed, she could guarantee that she would die a horrible death. "Where is this place?" Jing Yu swallowed her saliva silently, blinked her eyes, and asked the two girls. "This is, of course, my home," said Lin Feng. The two young ladies opened their mouths and were about to answer when a voice suddenly came from the door. The three of them were stunned when they heard the voice. Jing Yu looked towards the direction of the voice and saw a slender figure stepping into the room. He was dressed in a dark red robe, with a black belt and black gloves. His exposed chest muscles made Jing Yu's eyes twitch violently. Her gaze landed on the man's silver eye patch and his black hair was casually scattered. Damn, this was a very pretentious style. Exhibitionist. He didn't even wear his clothes properly. Jing Yu curled her lips in disdain. The two girls' faces turned red when they saw the legendary young master. Chapter 658. She bowed shyly to the man and called out sweetly, "Young master. You two little beauties can leave." The man's lips curled into a faint smile. He waved his hand at the two and dismissed them. Jing Yu leaned against the bed and crossed her arms. She looked at the man with interest. With Jing Yu's eyesight, how could she not recognize who this man was? Wasn't he the pirate leader who had crashed into her ship and caused her to fall into the sea and almost die? Not surprised? Not curious? Not afraid? The man raised his eyebrows and asked when he saw Jing Yu sizing him up. He found it interesting. Surprised? Curious? Afraid? Jing Yu's incomparably calm question stumped the man. Looking at Jing Yu's calm little face, he laughed out loud. "You are indeed worthy of being the woman that the King of Hell has taken a fancy to. How interesting. I say, for you." Jing Yu stretched and stood up. She blinked and looked at the man. "Are you an enemy of the Nether sect? Shouldn't you kill the King of Hell by hook or by crook? Why did you capture me? I'm just curious. The King of Hell who doesn't care about human lives actually has a woman." The man leisurely walked in front of Jing Yu and sized up Jing Yu's face. Jing Yu could clearly see the man's face. If he didn't have that annoying silver eye patch, he would be a handsome man. What a pity. He had such a good face, but he was blind in one eye. "Now that you've seen me, can you let me go?" Jing Yu blinked and looked at the man. "I'm afraid even if I let you go, you won't be able to get far." As the man spoke, he raised his hand and took out a piece of paper from his sleeve. Jing Yu took it and unfolded it in confusion. There were 3 large words on the paper that stung Jing Yu's eyes. Arrest warrant. However, the most terrifying thing was the portrait. "I'm going to fucking kill the person in the portrait. Is this a fucking painting of me? That nose was like a pig's nose." Jing Yu looked at the portrait with a dark expression and tried her best to look away. She looked at the bounty on it. Not bad, not bad. The bounty has increased again. It's already worth more than 1,000 taels of gold. It looks like Xiao Yi is really going all out this time. How is it? The 9th Imperial Concubine. The man looked at Jing Yu's pale face and thought that Jing Yu would be begging him, but the truth was, too ugly. Jing Yu opened the wanted poster seriously and pointed at the portrait on it. Then she pointed at herself and asked the man, "Tell me, which part of the person on this poster looks like me? My beautiful face was actually scribbled like this?" Look at this nose. The man stared blankly at Jingyu, who was filled with righteous indignation, and suddenly laughed. Haha. The man laughed and looked at Jingyu. This young master wanted to exchange you for some money. Now, it looks like I'll regret it later. Let me tell you, the bounty will increase. If you keep me here for another 2 or 3 days, the bounty on this warrant will double. Jingyu looked at the man with a smile and said, when the time comes, you can exchange me. Won't you make a huge profit? Ha! How interesting. The man laughed happily. Jingyu's appearance was very pleasing to the eye. Chapter 659. Since you've said so, this young master will naturally keep you. The man stood with his hands behind his back and smiled at Jingyu. You can stay here. If you need anything, just instruct the maids. Your den of thieves is really high-end. You even have maids. Jingyu calmly raised her eyebrows and walked back to the bed. I'm hungry. I want to eat. Also, is the king of hell dead? Why? Are you worried? The man narrowed his eyes and asked. Can I even ask? Jingyu curled her lips indifferently and narrowed her eyes. He's not dead. The man turned around and left after saying those 2 words. Jingyu's heart, which had been hanging in the air, finally calmed down. Jingyu laid on the bed. Sure enough, this man brought all the delicious food and drinks. Jingyu stared at the food for a long time and silently said, even if I die, I won't starve to death. She had no idea what this man wanted to do by bringing her here. As Jingyu ate, she thought about something. When she felt the burning gazes of the 2 young ladies beside her, even with Jingyu's willpower, she couldn't help but silently raise her hand to wipe her mouth. She turned to look at the 2 young ladies and asked, Tell me, what do you want to ask? I want to ask, how did you meet the young master? I heard that the young master saved you? Do you want to be our young master's wife? You still haven't told us your name. The 2 young ladies looked at Jingyu and asked excitedly. Hearing their questions, Jingyu's forehead dripped with sweat. What kind of questions are these? I don't know your young master. He's a pirate who wants to kill me. I don't know why he saved me. I'm a married woman and can't be your young master's wife. Finally, my name is Jingyu. Jingyu took a deep breath and answered their questions cleanly. Luckily, the 2 young ladies were pleasantly surprised and patted their chests. Luckily, you don't want to be our young master's wife. We still have a chance. Jingyu sweated profusely. What kind of maids are these? They're even thinking about their master. Speaking of which, what's your young master's name? Jingyu blinked and asked. So you don't even know our young master's name? The round-faced young lady said in surprise. It seems like you really don't know our young master. Our young master is the most handsome and the best man on this island. His name is Yuan Mingyuan. What a poetic name. The young lady said with a look of worship, which made Jingyu's eyes twitch. It's over. These 2 young ladies are too poisoned. Where's the poetic name? Jingyu ate silently. In the following time, the 2 young ladies were exclaiming about their young master. How many earth-shattering good deeds he had done in the past, such as killing some corrupt officials, saving them and so on. Jingyu also learned about this pirate gang from the 2 of them. They were very ordinary yet not ordinary pirates. They were tyrannical in this area all year round. They specifically targeted the ships of officials and wealthy merchants, but they turned a blind eye to the commoners. They were very casual. After Jingyu ate and drank to her heart's content, she stepped out of the house for the first time. Walking outside, she could hear the shouting from afar. Jingyu walked forward slightly and saw that at the foot of the mountain, groups of people seemed to be wrestling. Chapter 660. That man, Yuan Mingyuan, was currently holding a jug of wine in one hand and playing with an arrow in the other. He was watching the wrestling competition below and laughing heartily with the crowd. He watched as the pirates teased and complained tearfully to Yuan Mingyuan. Yuan Mingyuan unceremoniously kicked them away. This caused the crowd to laugh in pain. Men and women gathered together and the scene was very lively. Jingyu stood above and looked at the man with some confusion. So this was how the ancient pirate's lair was like? Just as Jing Yu was letting her imagination run wild, the people below seemed to have noticed Jing Yu and suddenly became lively. They laughed and said something to Yuan Mingyuan. Then Yuan Mingyuan, who was originally watching the fight, raised his head and looked over. His pitch-black eyes looked at Jing Yu and the corners of his mouth curled up into a faint smile. "Boss, quickly go and invite the lady down." That's right. Boss, quickly go. Let that lady see the glory of our Ghost King cave." The crowd laughed and cheered. Jing Yu raised her eyebrows slightly. She originally thought that this man would definitely ignore these people and treat them as a joke. She didn't expect that Yuan Mingyuan would really stand up and walk towards Jing Yu. Instantly, the crowd below cheered. Jing Yu widened her eyes and looked at Yuan Mingyuan walking up. The corners of her eyes twitched slightly. Should she not have come out just now? Our brothers are so enthusiastic. Shouldn't you give them some face too? Ninth Imperial Concubine. Yuan Mingyuan's lips curled up into a faint smile as he slowly extended his hand towards Jing Yu. Yuan Mingyuan's action immediately caused the people below to hold their breaths. They were so excited that their faces turned red. They seemed to be very anxious and wanted to put Jing Yu's hand on Yuan Mingyuan's. "If you want to go down, then go down. Just call out." Jing Yu faintly glanced at Yuan Mingyuan's hand, then turned around and walked straight down. It's not connected." "Ha! Boss is being despised. Boss, don't be discouraged. Keep going." Yuan Mingyuan rubbed his forehead, feeling a headache coming on. He glared at the people who were shouting the loudest, and then calmly followed behind Jing Yu. After Jing Yu went down, she found that there was no place for her to sit. Coincidentally, she saw that there was a chair next to where Yuan Mingyuan had been sitting. She happily went over and moved the chair over. Then she sat down in front of everyone. Everyone was stunned for a moment. Then, all of their faces revealed ambiguous expressions as they turned to look at Yuan Mingyuan. It had to be known that this chair wasn't something that anyone could sit on. Would Jing Yu be kicked out? Yuan Mingyuan paused and glanced at Jing Yu. He watched as Jing Yu casually sat in a chair and looked up at him. That kind of indifference, that clean and transparent appearance caused Yuan Mingyuan to faintly raise the corners of his mouth. Yuan Mingyuan didn't chase Jing Yu away. Instead, he lifted his robe and sat on the main seat. "Wow! This scene is like a painting. Pa, you even know how to paint." Everyone saw the two of them sit down. Suddenly, there was a wave of cheers. The wrestling match started again. Sitting so close to them, Jing Yu could see clearly. She watched the two men wrestle with each other. She was very focused. Who would win? Jing Yu was very focused. Yuan Mingyuan was originally watching as well. Perhaps it was because an unfamiliar figure suddenly appeared beside him. Yuan Mingyuan's gaze unconsciously fell on Jing Yu. In the end, Yuan Mingyuan simply looked at Jing Yu openly. Chapter 661. Jing Yu, who was focused on watching the competition, did not seem to notice Yuan Mingyuan's gaze. However, the truth was that Jing Yu's gaze was about to bore a hole through her. Her face darkened slightly as she turned to look at Yuan Mingyuan. "Have you seen enough?" Jing Yu looked coldly at Yuan Mingyuan and said, "Do you believe that this young lady will gouge your eyes out?" Peh. Yuan Mingyuan narrowed his eyes slightly, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Just as he was about to speak, he saw someone running toward Yuan Mingyuan. When he saw Jing Yu sitting beside Yuan Mingyuan, he seemed surprised for a moment, but he quickly recovered. "Boss, the Nether sect is attacking," the person said anxiously. Jing Yu's eyes lit up when she heard this. At least Xiao Chen still had some conscience. He came to find her so quickly. Jing Yu's lips curled into a faint smile. Yuan Mingyuan clearly saw the change in Jing Yu's expression. He did not know why, but when he saw Jing Yu's smile, there was a flash of anger in his heart. "You came at the right time." Yuan Mingyuan stood up and looked down at Jing Yu as he said, "I didn't expect you to be so useful that the King of Hell came to save you personally." "What do you mean?" Jing Yu was slightly shocked. She looked at Yuan Mingyuan with uncertainty in her eyes. "You don't need to know." Yuan Mingyuan stood up, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. The corners of his lips curled up as he said, Take Miss Jingyu away to rest. The rest of you, follow me outside the island to welcome the King of Hell to our Ghost King cave. Let's go. King of Hell or Ghost King, who is more powerful? Of course, our big brother is more powerful. The group of people cheered as they picked up their weapons and followed Yuan Mingyuan out of the island. Jingyu stood up and was about to follow when she was stopped by two people. Jingyu calmly looked at the two people and obediently returned to her room. Haha, do you really think this lousy place can trap me? Jingyu returned to the room where she first woke up. Her gaze fell on the windowsill. A few young ladies were chatting at the door and did not notice Jingyu in the room. Jingyu's eyes turned as she silently climbed up the windowsill. The pirates were all attracted to the outside of the island. As for the few pirates guarding the island, Jingyu took them down effortlessly. She easily knocked them unconscious and plundered a dagger from a pirate's body. Only then did she walk along the deserted road towards the outside of the island. Walking out of the room, Jingyu stood on top of a rock. Only then did she clearly see the appearance of the island. The island was full of rocks and weeds. It was hard to imagine that there were actually people living here. Moreover, the place where the people lived just now was blocked by a stone wall. Jingyu stood on top of the rock and looked around. She found a direction and jumped onto the rock, heading towards the surface of the sea. It was when the sun was at its peak. The closer Jingyu walked, the more she could hear the shouting and talking. Jingyu secretly ridiculed as she climbed up. This Yuan Mingyuan really knows how to choose a place to build his nest. There were rocks everywhere. Who would have thought that this island full of rocks would be the nest of pirates? Jingyu crawled through countless holes. She could clearly hear the shouting and killing sounds, but no matter how Jingyu walked, she seemed to be wandering around this place. Chapter 662. Jingyu tried to enter this cave and come out from that cave several times, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't get out. This place actually has a way out. Jingyu burst into tears. She stood in place and looked at the stone walls that were almost exactly the same. Her brows furrowed deeply. Jingyu wandered around in the same place for a while. Just as she was thinking about how to continue, her sharp ears suddenly heard footsteps. Her heart skipped a beat. Her figure flashed and she found a rock and hid in it. She then stuck out half of her head and squinted at the place where the sound came from. Quick, quick, quick. If you dilly-dally, the boss will beat you up. Aya, how could I miss the toilet? Two figures carrying large swords rushed towards Jingyu. Jingyu was overjoyed. She shrank her body even further and adjusted her breathing slightly. She watched as the two figures rushed past her and entered a cave. Jingyu paused and stood up. She carefully followed behind the two figures. The two were obviously familiar with the terrain. They wandered around the numerous caves. Jingyu followed behind them. Finally, she saw the cave in front of her. It led to the open sea. There were countless ships gathered there. There was also a fortress made of rocks. Yuan Mingyuan was sitting on top of a rock. Jingyu saw Yuan Mingyuan at a glance. He seemed to be talking to someone. Jingyu paused slightly and turned around to hide. She moved towards a rock on the side and used the rock to block her figure. Then she looked at the movement on the sea. There was a big ship on the sea, 2 or 3 medium-sized ships, and dozens of small ships. Looking at this situation, it was really powerful. Jingyu's eyes rolled slightly. A pair of golden eyes quietly appeared. There seemed to be a green halo around the golden eyes. Jingyu narrowed her eyes and looked at the sea. The things that were originally quite far away were not obstructed by Jingyu's eyes. The figure standing at the bow of the ship was very familiar. A pair of cold eyes were looking at Yuan Mingyuan from afar. He was dressed in a black robe and stood with his hands behind his back. Who else could it be but Xiao Chen? The two looked at each other for a long time. It seemed like they were negotiating. Finally, Yuan Mingyuan got down from the rock and Xiao Chen's ship docked. There was a certain distance between them. Behind them were their subordinates. Xiao Chen's pair of cold eyes looked at Yuan Mingyuan without any warmth. Where is she? The two indifferent words made the corners of Yuan Mingyuan's mouth curl up into a smile. It's just a woman. I'm really shocked that you, the King of Hell, mobilized all the members of the Nether sect. Xiao Chen looked at Yuan Mingyuan coldly and did not say anything. This person is indeed in my hands. However, if I let you take her away so easily, wouldn't it be a waste of my brother's efforts? Yuan Mingyuan's lips curled up slightly as he said, "You should know that this woman is worth a lot of money. What do you want?" Xiao Chen's eyes became even colder. The words he spat out were almost frostbitten. "What do you think that woman is worth?" Yuan Mingyuan did not say what he wanted. Instead, he gave Xiao Chen a choice. When Xiao Chen heard this, he immediately frowned. Chapter 663. Haha. Yuan Mingyuan laughed heartily. "King of Hell, I'll give you 3 days. Within these 3 days, I won't touch a single hair on this woman. As long as you can give me something that satisfies me, I'll personally deliver her to you. If you can't give me something that satisfies me within 3 days, then I'll take this woman." As soon as Yuan Mingyuan finished speaking, Xiao Chen's eyes suddenly turned cold. The intense killing intent was frightening. Yuan Mingyuan's heart skipped a beat. His eyes trembled slightly. It seemed like this woman was even more extraordinary than he had imagined. She could actually make the King of Hell so concerned. "Do you really think that this king can't do anything to your lousy island?" The coldness on Xiao Chen's face increased inch by inch. The words he spat out were cold and emotionless. He actually looked like he was going to fight Yuan Mingyuan head-on. Jingyu was anxious. "Xiao Chen, don't be stupid. In this situation, the most important thing was to fight head-on. Moreover, this was the Nether sect's power. Right now, even a little bit of power was extremely precious to them. Perhaps, this Nether sect would be their most secretive trump card or their escape route in a moment of life and death. No matter what, they couldn't just let it happen." Jingyu was anxious. However, no matter how anxious she could only continue to watch. "What? Does the King of Hell want to fight head-on with me?" Yuan Mingyuan's lips curled into a cold smile. He looked at Xiao Chen and said, "If your Nether sect wants to stand, no one in my Ghost King cave will be afraid of you. I only want to ask, are you really confident that you can invade my island? Rescue your woman?" Xiao Chen's killing intent was boiling in his heart. He stared at Yuan Mingyuan as if he wanted to kill him on the spot. "Master!" Xingyi took a step forward and called out to Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen slowly clenched his hands. He looked coldly at Yuan Mingyuan and said, "If she loses even a single hair, this king will definitely flatten your Ghost King cave." Xiao Chen said coldly. Then he turned and left. Xingyi looked deeply at Yuan Mingyuan before he turned and left with Xiao Chen. Qin Gu and Jing Lang, who were standing on the ship, looked at the commotion below with confusion. What does that pirate leader want? How does he know? Qin Gu looked at Jing Lang's face. After watching for such a long time, he thought that he would be able to lead a large force and charge forward. However, after a few words, he stopped fighting. "I don't know." Jing Lang also shook his head in confusion. Seeing Xiao Chen come up, the pirates also returned to the island. The two sides looked at each other from afar. Xiao Chen stood on the ship and said faintly, "Go back." "Go back? Go back where?" Qin Gu looked at Xiao Chen in confusion. Xiao Chen turned around coldly and entered the house. Jing Yu watched Xiao Chen's ship leave. She sighed in relief. Fortunately, Xiao Chen didn't fight. However, the two of them had talked for so long. Yuan Mingyuan didn't say what he wanted. How did Xiao Chen know? How could he take out something that could satisfy Yuan Mingyuan? Jing Yu grinned slightly. It looked like she had to be prepared to escape at any time. As Jing Yu thought about it, she sneaked into the cave before Yuan Mingyuan's men came over. She had made a mark when she came out. Now, she followed the mark and walked forward. However, what the hell is going on? Did someone make the mark disappear? Chapter 664. Jing Yu was completely lost in this cave. She had clearly marked the place, but when Jing Yu came back, those marks were gone. Jing Yu turned in a circle and walked around based on her memory. The more she walked, the more she felt that something was wrong. Jing Yu walked back and finally heard voices. She turned around and said that she wanted to see if she could follow someone. However, when Jingyu turned around, she bumped into someone. Jingyu took a step back and rubbed her forehead. She looked up at the person in front of her who was blocking her way. What a coincidence. You're here too. Jingyu grinned and looked at Yuan Mingyuan, who had a strange expression on his face. She raised her hand and greeted him politely. Then she said happily, Oh, you guys are busy. I won't disturb you. I'll leave first. Jingyu said this quickly and then turned to leave. Do you think you can walk out of this Ghost King cave? Yuan Mingyuan didn't stop her. He just said this lightly. Jingyu froze and turned around to face Yuan Mingyuan with resentment. I don't want to walk out. I'm just looking for a way to go back, Jingyu said helplessly. Yuan Mingyuan raised his eyebrows and said, Don't you want to escape? Escape? Jingyu smiled and said, If I really want to leave, do you think you can stop me? What a big tone. Yuan Mingyuan's lips curved into a disdainful smile. He walked past Jingyu and said, Come with me. Jingyu was annoyed by Yuan Mingyuan's disdain. She got lost in the Ghost King cave and was caught red-handed. He even said that he couldn't stop her if she escaped. It seemed like no one would believe him. However, Jingyu wasn't lying. Looking at the situation, there must be some story between Xiao Qin and Yuan Mingyuan. She was curious. Secondly, wasn't hiding in the Ghost King cave a safe place? Could the Holy Family and Poison Sect's hands reach here? If they could lure the Tokyo's army here, they might as well wipe them out all at once. She could take advantage of the chaos to escape. To tell the truth, Jingyu wasn't worried at all. Seeing that Xiao Chen, Jingyu, and the others were fine, she relaxed. When Yuan Mingyuan brought Jingyu back to the island, the girls were already running around in circles. When they saw Yuan Mingyuan bring Jingyu back, they were so excited that they wanted to cry. Jingyu sighed again and again as she watched Yuan Mingyuan comfort the girls. She shook violently. No wonder these girls were so infatuated with Yuan Mingyuan. Look at him. Tsk. Jingyu leaned against the couch to rest. After running around for so long, she was really tired. When night fell, Jingyu was playing with a writing brush. She was focused on counting the hairs on the tip of the brush. When Yuan Mingyuan entered the room, he saw this scene. The girl in a casual robe was lying on the couch, counting the hairs on the brush. 189, 190. Jingyu was counting seriously. Yuan Mingyuan simply sat down on the couch. Jingyu's hand paused in the middle of counting. She glanced at Yuan Mingyuan and continued counting, ignoring him completely. Chapter 665. What's the point of counting this? Yuan Mingyuan asked with a slight frown. Do I have nothing better to do? Jingyu was interrupted by Yuan Mingyuan and suddenly forgot where she was counting. She angrily threw the brush in her hand on the table, stared at Yuan Mingyuan and said, Why aren't you sleeping in the middle of the night? What are you doing in my room? This is my room. Yuan Mingyuan's face darkened when he heard this. How long had he slept? How did it become Jingyu's room in the blink of an eye? She really wasn't polite. You let me sleep, so this is my room. Jingyu stared at Yuan Mingyuan and said, If there's nothing else, hurry up and leave. Don't disturb me. You really aren't polite. Yuan Mingyuan was so angry that he laughed. He narrowed his eyes at Jingyu and said, The wanted poster said that you are an evildoer with different pupils. This young master has looked at you for so long, how come I can't see where you are evildoer? What? Are you scared? Jingyu's mouth curved into a faint smile. Her pair of black eyes looked at Yuan Mingyuan and said, It's just nonsense. Why would I be scared? Yuan Mingyuan said very indifferently. He stood up and said, In my opinion, I'm very curious. To what extent will Yama do for you? Boring. Jingyu rolled her eyes indifferently. She didn't look at Yuan Mingyuan and said indifferently, You should worry about the future of your Ghost King cave. Capturing me may not be a good thing. Hee. Yuan Mingyuan narrowed his eyes at Jingyu's petite body and said, I'm looking forward to it. After speaking, Yuan Mingyuan walked away. Jingyu turned her head and looked at Yuan Mingyuan's back. Seeing Yuan Mingyuan's dark red clothes flash by, she grinned. Why does this man always wear dark red clothes? It's really flirtatious. Jingyu didn't sleep that night. Being in an unsafe place, Jingyu didn't dare to sleep peacefully. After a short nap, she kept her high tension. On this island, although it was a pirate den, the discipline here wasn't bad at all. Jingyu had been listening to the movements outside for the entire night. The patrolling people were always on time, guarding this small island. When the sky was slightly bright, this sleeping island woke up amidst the noise. Early in the morning, there was the sound of people practicing martial arts. Jingyu moved her sore body and turned over with her eyes closed. When she heard the sound of the door opening, she squinted her eyes and looked sideways. "Miss Jingyu, young master asked you to go to the front hall to eat with him." The servant girl bowed slightly to Jingyu and said with a face full of envy, "This servant will help Miss wash up. Miss is really fortunate to be able to have a meal with young master." Jingyu's face darkened. She closed her eyes again and said, "I'm not going. If you want to go, you can go by yourself." The little girl seemed to be shocked and said anxiously, "Why don't you go?" "If I don't want to go, then I won't go." Jingyu frowned in annoyance and said, "Don't disturb me. I want to sleep." "Your temper is even worse than this young master's." Just as Jingyu was about to go back to sleep, a slender figure walked into Jingyu's room. Jingyu's face darkened. She gritted her teeth and looked at a certain someone in a red dress coquettishly and said, "Don't you know etiquette? Don't randomly enter a girl's room." Jingyu looked at Yuan Mingyuan as if she wanted to eat him. Chapter 666. This young master will say it again, "Is this my room?" Yuan Mingyuan looked at Jingyu seriously. "I will also say it again, I slept in this room, so it is my room." Jingyu sat up and calmly stared at Yuan Mingyuan. Yuan Mingyuan rubbed his eyebrows and said, "Get up quickly, I will wait for you outside and take you to see the scenery of my Ghost King cave." "Yo, so kind? Aren't you afraid that I will run away?" Jingyu looked at Yuan Mingyuan and said, "Didn't you say it? If you want to leave, I can't stop you." Yuan Mingyuan looked sideways at Jingyu and said, "Since that is the case, you haven't left yet, doesn't that mean that you don't want to leave? Since you don't want to leave, why should I stop you?" Jingyu's face darkened. She stared at Yuan Mingyuan and said, "What are you still standing there for? Do you want to see me change? I really wonder if you are a woman." Yuan Mingyuan's face turned slightly red. He flung his sleeves and left embarrassedly. Jingyu looked at Yuan Mingyuan's appearance and laughed out loud. "This brat is actually shy, too interesting." When Jingyu finished eating and drinking, Yuan Mingyuan had almost finished drinking a pot of tea. Seeing the refreshed Jingyu, he said gloomily, "Are you women all so slow? Have some patience." Jingyu stretched and said, "These days, those who are impatient can't get a wife." Yuan Mingyuan frowned. He was too lazy to say anything more to Jingyu. He stood up and walked forward. Jingyu shrugged slightly and followed behind Yuan Mingyuan. She watched Yuan Mingyuan greet the people on the road with a smile. He led Jingyu to the back of the mountain. The back of the mountain was full of stones. She didn't know which hole they went into, but after walking around for a while, they found a flight of stairs. This is the origin of the Ghost King cave. Once you enter this cave, even ghosts will cry. As Yuan Mingyuan walked up the stairs, he said, "There are hundreds of caves in the Ghost King's cave. I don't know how many dead ends there are, or how many entrances there are. There are simply too many people who come in and cannot leave. Every month, we can clear out countless corpses from this cave. Only the people of our Ghost King's cave can recognize the way here," Yuan Mingyuan said faintly. "It's no wonder you can dominate this area of the sea. If you hide here when you run for your life, you won't have to worry about anything." Jingyu followed behind Yuan Mingyuan and laughed. "Easy for you to say." Yuan Mingyuan threw out those 4 words. He didn't continue the topic. He pointed at the glowing hole in front of them and said, "Go up. You can reach the highest stone on the island. You can see the entirety of the Ghost King cave from there." Jingyu nodded silently. They walked for a while before they finally saw the small hole. Yuan Mingyuan raised his hand and moved the boulder in front of the hole away. Jing Yu watched Yuan Mingyuan go out, then followed him. As soon as she climbed up, she felt the sea breeze. Jing Yu stood up straight and looked around. There was an endless sea around her. At this moment, she was standing on a rather tall boulder. Below her were all rocks. Standing from this position, she could see the entire island. But the strange thing was that Jing Yu couldn't see where the pirate's nest was. Chapter 667. This is the Cave of the Ghost King. Yuan Mingyuan stood with his hands behind his back and stood beside Jing Yu. He looked at the island under the sun and said faintly, "This used to be called Rock Island. It was desolate and uninhabited. The original people who lived here created the Cave of the Ghost King." "Then how did you get here?" Jing Yu sat down cross-legged, facing the sea. She raised her head slightly and asked. "An accident." Yuan Mingyuan also sat down beside Jing Yu. He narrowed his eyes and said, "Aren't you curious why I became a pirate?" "What's there to be curious about?" Jing Yu smiled faintly and said, "It's good to be a pirate. It's leisurely, free, and worry-free." "You're really interesting," Yuan Mingyuan said with a smile. "Can you stop repeating the same thing over and over again? Isn't it boring?" Jing Yu rolled her eyes in disgust. She flipped her hair and looked sideways at Yuan Mingyuan. When she saw Yuan Mingyuan's silver eye mask, she frowned slightly. "What happened to your eye?" Jing Yu looked at Yuan Mingyuan and asked, "You don't look like someone who's weak in martial arts. How did someone hurt your eye?" "Who told you that my eye was hurt?" Yuan Mingyuan heard Jing Yu's question. His body trembled slightly, and then he turned his head to look at Jing Yu and asked, "Not hurt? If you're not hurt, then why are you covering your eyes? I thought you were a one-eyed blind person." Jing Yu curled her lips in disdain and said casually. However, just as Jing Yu finished speaking, Yuan Mingyuan's face suddenly turned cold. "Hey, I didn't mean anything else. I was just asking." Jing Yu looked at Yuan Mingyuan's gloomy face and said, "Don't worry about me. Let's talk about the Cave of the Ghost King." "My eyes." Yuan Mingyuan lowered his head and reached out to touch one of his eyes. He seemed to want to say something, but he didn't want to. Jing Yu opened her eyes wide and was ready to listen to the story. However, Yuan Mingyuan suddenly paused. Jing Yu was very anxious. "What happened to your eyes? What's wrong? Just say it." He stopped halfway through his sentence. This kind of person could be tortured to tears at any moment. Just as Jing Yu was in a dilemma, Yuan Mingyuan suddenly turned to look at Jing Yu and asked, "Do you want to see it?" "Ah." Jing Yu was stunned. She looked at Yuan Mingyuan and blinked. "What are you looking at? Look at your eyes? What's so good about her eyes?" Yuan Mingyuan lowered his hand and said faintly, "Do you know why I didn't kill you and why I saved you? Didn't you say that it's because I'm the woman that the King of Hell took a fancy to?" Jing Yu said calmly, "If it was just because of this, you would be in a dungeon right now. Why would I treat you so well?" Yuan Mingyuan's eyes flashed with a trace of disdain as he said faintly. Jing Yu was slightly stunned. So there was another reason. "I'm keeping you here because of that arrest warrant," Yuan Mingyuan said. "So, you want to exchange me for money?" Jing Yu calmly raised her eyebrows and said, "No." Yuan Mingyuan frowned and said, "Because you're wanted, everyone has the right to kill an evildoer with different pupils. It's ridiculous." Chapter 668. Ridiculous. Jing Yu sat up straight and stared at Yuan Mingyuan. "That's because you haven't seen any abnormal pupils. If you had, you would have been scared away. I've seen too many people like you." "What's wrong with abnormal pupils?" Yuan Mingyuan clenched his fists and said coldly, "Are abnormal pupils really evildoers? Are they monsters? Do they have to be killed?" Jing Yu was stunned. Looking at the agitated Yuan Mingyuan, she frowned. "She wasn't agitated, okay? Didn't you ask me why I'm wearing an eye mask?" Yuan Mingyuan raised his hand and touched his silver eye patch. He said lightly, "It's because this eye is different from others." "Different?" Jing Yu was stunned for a moment. She watched as Yuan Mingyuan lifted his hand and untied his blindfold. His slightly lowered eyelids revealed his face, and his handsome features carried with them a trace of wickedness. Jingyu stared at Yuan Mingyuan with wide eyes. She watched with her own eyes as Yuan Mingyuan slowly opened his eyes. Beneath the blindfold, a blood-red eye stared straight at Jingyu. One eye was black, and the other was blood-red. There were even black threads running through the blood-red eye. Looking at this appearance, it seemed that Yuan Mingyuan's eye was necrotic. Jingyu's eyes were filled with fear. This was the first time she saw someone with a red eye. There was no white, only black. Are you afraid? Yuan Mingyuan clearly saw the fear in Jingyu's eyes. His lips curled into a cold smile and said, "That's the reason. My eye has been necrotic since I was young. Because of this eye, I was ostracized. My parents were killed, and I was called a monster on the run. In my ears, all the voices I heard were monsters. They should be killed." Yuan Mingyuan touched his eye and said, "Fortunately, I hid here and never went out." Yuan Mingyuan said, "This time, when I saw the contents of the wanted poster, it reminded me of what happened in the past. That's why I kept you here. Do you understand now? Have you never thought of revenge?" Jingyu was silent for a moment, then looked at Yuan Mingyuan and asked, "Revenge?" Yuan Mingyuan was stunned. He lowered his head and said, "You don't know how desperate I was at that time. The world spurned me and all my family members were dead." "So what?" Jingyu stood up slightly and looked at the vast sea in the distance. She said coldly, "They died because of you, but you hide here and drag out an ignoble existence. Do you think you are worthy of their deaths?" "Why should I be?" Yuan Mingyuan also stood up. The two looked at each other from afar. Yuan Mingyuan said, "In order to let me live, my family members died. I did it. I'm still alive. I'm worthy of their deaths. Are you really happy to live like this? Who will avenge your family members? Who will avenge your hatred?" Jingyu's eyes were rolling. An uncontrollable anger exploded. "You haven't experienced it. How would you know me?" Yuan Mingyuan was also a little agitated. He stared at Jingyu and said, "It's just the suppression of the 9 emperors by the Emperor of Tokyo. You have the 9 emperors and the protection of the King of Hell. How would you know how difficult it is?" "Ha!" Jingyu laughed out loud. She looked coldly at Yuan Mingyuan and said, "So, you don't believe that I have abnormal pupils?" Chapter 669. Is that not the case? Yuan Mingyuan looked at Jingyu with a deep gaze. "Because of my different pupils, my father was brutally murdered by the Holy Family. Because of my different pupils, the person I loved became a rebel. Because of my different pupils, I became the target of everyone. I escaped from the Tokyo like a stray dog and wandered everywhere." Jingyu looked sideways at Yuan Mingyuan. She raised her hand and pointed at her own eyes. She stared at Yuan Mingyuan and said, "Look carefully. It is because of this pair of eyes that I can understand everything that you have experienced." Yuan Mingyuan's heart suddenly tightened. In Jingyu's words, he could hear an incomparably strong anger and sorrow, as well as a monstrous hatred. This feeling almost instantly stimulated a resonance that had been hidden in his body for a long time. "Do you see it clearly?" "My eyes." Jingyu looked coldly at Yuan Mingyuan. Yuan Mingyuan looked at Jingyu's pitch-black eyes in horror. Under his gaze, a pair of golden eyes slowly appeared. Those golden eyes were as fervent as a lion's. They shone brightly under the scorching sun. They were so fervent and arrogant that they carried a strong aura of a wild beast. When she looked at Yuan Mingyuan, it was as if a king had personally arrived. She was incomparably arrogant. Yuan Mingyuan's body froze on the spot. He looked at the woman standing in front of him. That pair of golden eyes were so bright that he suddenly lost all words. "Now, do you see it clearly?" Jingyu looked at Yuan Mingyuan with a faint smile and said, "I have different pupils. What you are experiencing right now is what I am experiencing right now." Yuan Mingyuan was unable to recover for a long time. "Right now, I'm bearing it, but one day in the future, I'll return it double." Jingyu looked at Yuan Mingyuan and said, "I want to avenge my father." I want the blood of my enemies to wash away my hatred. I will take back what I have lost with my own hands. Yuan Mingyuan, what about you? Jing Yu raised her head slightly and looked at Yuan Mingyuan. She called out Yuan Mingyuan's name clearly. At this moment, Yuan Mingyuan's heart trembled violently as he looked at the woman standing under the sunlight. She was so dazzling. On this day, on top of the tall rock, the woman in black with her golden eyes entered Yuan Mingyuan's heart. He never thought that there would be such a person that would amaze him. The deadline of 3 days was fast, but it was also slow. Xiaochen came again. This time, Xiaochen didn't come with people. He only came with a boat. What did you say? King Yama came with a woman? Yuan Mingyuan walked out of the island while listening to the people around him. He suddenly frowned. That's right, the King of Hell only came with a ship and a few subordinates. The person next to him followed behind Yuan Mingyuan and asked with doubt, Boss, could this be a trick of the King of Hell? Yuan Mingyuan's heart was beating faster. He felt that something terrible was about to happen. Outside the island of the Ghost King Cave, Xiaochen had already disembarked from the boat. He stood on the beach with his back facing Yuan Mingyuan. He squinted at the rising and falling tides of the sea without any expression. He only turned around when he heard footsteps behind him. Where is he? Xiaochen narrowed his eyes and looked at Yuan Mingyuan. He frowned and looked behind Yuan Mingyuan. He didn't see a familiar figure and asked with a cold expression. Chapter 670. Where are the things you prepared? Yuan Mingyuan wasn't in a hurry as he looked at Xiaochen and asked. I want to see Jing Yu. Xiaochen didn't back down at all. If he didn't see Jing Yu in one piece, he wouldn't give him anything. Yuan Mingyuan looked at Xiaochen's expression and felt a little sad. 2 days ago, Jing Yu's words had been so resolute. The 9 emperors were her husband and the love of her life. No matter how much you, the King of Hell, went through water and tread on fire for her, you wouldn't be able to gain anything. As he thought of this, Yuan Mingyuan suddenly felt a sense of sympathy for his fellow sufferer. The expression on his face softened. He raised his hand and said to the person beside him, Go and bring Miss Jing Yu out. The person beside him responded and turned to leave. Just as Xiaochen was about to lose his patience, he finally saw a woman slowly walk over from afar. Her black hair was casually tied up and she was dressed in black. She walked towards Xiaochen step by step. Seeing that familiar face, Xiaochen's cold lips finally relaxed. His eyes burned as he looked at Jing Yu and the corners of his mouth slowly curled up. Jing Yu naturally saw Xiaochen as well. Her eyes curved and she revealed a brilliant smile at Xiaochen. The two of them were clearly so far apart and didn't say a single word, but that small gaze and comfortable smile made Yuan Mingyuan feel a kind of tacit understanding. This was a tacit understanding that he couldn't interfere in. This feeling caused Yuan Mingyuan's heart to fill with a strange color. King of Hell, you've seen her. What have you prepared to exchange with me? Yuan Mingyuan narrowed his eyes as he looked at Xiaochen and asked. When Xiaochen heard Yuan Mingyuan's words, he withdrew his gaze from Jing Yu and looked indifferently at Yuan Mingyuan. He raised his hand slightly and Xing Yi nodded behind him. He walked onto the boat and brought down a woman under everyone's puzzled gazes. A delicate woman wearing an orange dress stood beside Xiaochen in fear. She raised her eyes slightly and looked at Yuan Mingyuan. Jing Yu was puzzled. Why did Xiaochen bring a woman down? Jing Yu looked sideways at Yuan Mingyuan and realized that the moment Yuan Mingyuan saw the woman, his entire body froze on the spot. His eyes were filled with disbelief. The woman also saw Yuan Mingyuan. Her eyes were first filled with shock, then joy, and then tears overflowed from her eyes. Big brother Yuan? A tentative call came from her mouth. Jing Yu could clearly see Yuan Mingyuan's body fiercely shake. Liner. Yuan Mingyuan also called out a name. Woo, brother Yuan. Tears flowed from the woman's eyes as she ran towards Yuan Mingyuan. She hugged Yuan Mingyuan tightly and cried, Brother Yuan, you are still alive. You're still alive, woo. Liner is so scared. Liner, don't be scared. Don't be scared. Yuan Mingyuan hugged the woman tightly, his eyes filled with joy. Jing Yu walked towards Xiao Chen and looked at this scene with confusion in her eyes. One person for one person. You and Ming Yuan, the two of us don't owe each other anything. Xiao Chen looked at Jing Yu from head to toe. When he saw that Jing Yu was unharmed, he heaved a huge sigh of relief and turned to look at Yuan Mingyuan. Brother Yuan? The woman wiped the tears from her face and looked up at Yuan Mingyuan. Chapter 671. Thank you, King of Hell. Yuan Mingyuan looked at Xiao Chen, then at Jing Yu. Finally, he spat out 2 words to Xiao Chen with a heavy heart. Xiao Chen looked up at Yuan Mingyuan. Then he held Jing Yu's hand and turned to leave. Yuan Mingyuan looked at their departing figures and paused slightly. Then he called out, I'm afraid there will be a storm tonight. If you want to leave, you'll have to wait until tomorrow. Why don't you stay on my island for the night? That's fine. Thank you. Yuan Mingyuan looked at Xiao Chen with some hesitation. Then he pursed his lips and added, Miss Jing Yu, what do you think? Jing Yu was slightly taken aback. She looked up at Xiao Chen and then looked up at the sky. The sky was indeed covered with layers of clouds. It was obvious that it was going to rain. It was indeed not safe to go out to sea on a rainy day. With this thought in mind, Jing Yu looked at Xiao Chen with a questioning gaze. Ninth brother, since this young hero has invited us, why don't we accept his invitation? When Qinggu heard that there was going to be a storm, he immediately became excited and nervous. Last time, he almost lost half his life. Before Xiao Chen could say anything, he quickly jumped out and said, That's great. Let's go and see what the place Ninth Aunt has been staying at for the past few days looks like. When Qinggu saw that Xiao Chen was not speaking, he was afraid that Xiao Chen would reject him. Thus, he quickly said, Yes, sir. Xiao Chen was originally a little hesitant. However, when he heard Qing Ji's words, his eyes narrowed slightly and he agreed. He raised his chin slightly and looked at Yuan Mingyuan. Then I'll have to trouble you. Please. Yuan Mingyuan politely stepped aside and welcomed Xiao Chen and the others into the Ghost King cave. Since it was Yuan Mingyuan who personally welcomed them, the pirates naturally had no objections. Everyone on the island started a fire to cook and served them with good wine and meat. In the island's main hall, everyone sat together. Jing Yu finally knew who that woman was. It turned out to be Yuan Mingyuan's half-sister, Wen Lin. She had been separated from Yuan Mingyuan many years ago and hadn't seen each other for 5 or 6 years. At this moment, the two of them were sitting at the side, chatting endlessly. Jing Yu looked at the two of them and blinked slightly. He looked up at Xiao Chen and asked, How do you know that this person is Yuan Mingyuan's sister? Do you know each other? We have a history. Xiao Chen looked at Yuan Mingyuan with narrowed eyes and said, Back then, Yuan Mingyuan was said to be a monster and was hunted by many major forces. The Nether sect was one of them. The Nether sect was involved as well? Jing Yu's eyes widened when she heard this. She looked at Xiao Chen with a shocked expression. Although those with different pupils are said to be monsters, there are also other rumors. They talk about how powerful those with different pupils are and how those with different pupils can dominate the world if they can get their hands on them. Xiao Chen raised his body slightly and looked at Jing Yu from the side. He said, Who wouldn't be tempted by such rumors? If the Nether sect doesn't snatch and kill those with different pupils, we'll be the next ones to be destroyed and hunted down. No wonder Yuan Mingyuan hates you so much. Jing Yu pursed her lips and said, This is karma. Xiao Chen's expression froze slightly when he heard this. While Jing Yu and Xiao Chen were talking, Yuan Mingyuan and Wen Lin walked over. King of Hell. My lord, Wen Lin's eyes were red as she bowed slightly at Xiao Chen. It was obvious that she had been crying. Chapter 672. At that moment, Yuan Mingyuan looked at Xiao Chen with a much gentler gaze. He sat down beside Xiao Chen and Jing Yu. Brother Yuan, it was this official who saved me and prevented me from falling into the brothel. Wen Lin looked at Xiao Chen gratefully and held Yuan Mingyuan's hand as she spoke seriously. Yes. Yuan Mingyuan raised his hand and patted Wen Lin's head. From Wen Lin's mouth, he learned that after they had been separated for so many years, Wen Lin had grown up in the homes of many relatives. She didn't expect that a small official would take a fancy to her. He wanted to force her to be his concubine, but when Lin did not agree, she ran away in the night and headed in the direction of Yangzhou. She was cheated of all her traveling expenses and was even sold to the brothel. Fortunately, she was beautiful and was not beaten or scolded. She was supposed to receive guests yesterday. The disheartened when Lin was prepared to die, but she was saved by Xiao Chen. She learned about Yuan Mingyuan from Xiao Chen and followed him. Brother Yuan, this official said that you stole his wife. He said that he wanted to use Lin to redeem his wife. When Lin looked at Yuan Mingyuan with a wronged expression and said, Brother Yuan, how could you steal someone else's wife? Silly girl, Big Brother is just playing around with this lord. Yuan Mingyuan's expression froze. He smiled and patted Wen Lin's head as he said, You guys, isn't his wife sitting beside him right now? Madam, did Brother Yuan do anything to you? If he bullies you, you must bully him back. Only then did Wen Lin's gaze fall on Jingyu. She looked at Jingyu with a sincere expression. I'm fine. Your brother Yuan is very polite to me. Jingyu smiled at Wen Lin in a friendly manner. So you're the official's wife. Madam, you're really beautiful. Wen Lin blinked and looked at Jingyu happily. Her eyes were filled with envy and her words made Jingyu's eyes twitch. She did not know why, but she felt a chill down her spine when she was praised. When Lin grows up, she will definitely be prettier than me, Jingyu said to Wen Lin. Really? Wen Lin's eyes brightened and she said happily, When I grow up, I must marry a man who looks like him. Wen Lin spoke very seriously, but there was no emotion in her eyes. There was only gratitude. When she looked at Jingyu and Xiao Chen with her eyes filled with envy and anticipation. Her words made everyone was stunned. Why do you want to marry a man like him? Jingyu asked in confusion. Because he is a good person. When Lin said seriously, Madam, you are so lucky to be doing your best to save your wife. When Lin grows up, I want to be as happy as you. Huh, a good person? Jingyu laughed when she heard Wen Lin say that he was a good person. She looked at Xiao Chen with a scrutinizing gaze and looked at Xiao Chen from head to toe. She could not see how Xiao Chen looked like a good person. Xiao Chen's face stiffened when Jingyu looked at him. His face darkened and he called out Jingyu's name gloomily. Cough, 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 it's nothing. Jingyu coughed and looked at Wen Lin with arched eyebrows. If that's the case, Lin must grow up quickly. Otherwise, how can I meet a good man like him? Chapter 673. Jingyu deliberately emphasized the words good man. That strange flavor caused Yuan Mingyuan's lips to curl up as he listened from the side. Aya, this Ghost King's cave is really strange. I can't even find the way. While everyone was talking, Qingge, who couldn't stand to be idle, also came back excitedly. The moment he entered, he started chattering away. Regarding Qingji's habit of being familiar with everyone, Qingge didn't care. Jingyu was speechless. Yuan Mingyuan politely invited Xiao Chen and the others to rest in the Ghost King's cave. At night, the heavy rain really did come down. Jingyu stood under the eaves and watched the heavy rain wash the rocks. The muddy water flowed down the ditch. She could almost hear the sound of the waves crashing against the rocks. That sound was so pleasant to the ears. Jingyu stood under the eaves in a daze. Suddenly, a pair of hands wrapped around Jingyu from behind and pulled her into an embrace. The familiar smell and broad chest made Jingyu's body pause for a moment. Then she raised her head slightly and leaned on Xiao Chen. What are you looking at? You're so engrossed. Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes and rubbed Jingyu's cheek as he asked. Nothing, I'm just listening to the sound of the waves. Jingyu relaxed her body and leaned on Xiao Chen. She closed her eyes and felt Xiao Chen's heartbeat and breathing. Did you calculate that Yuan Mingyuan wouldn't do anything to you? Xiao Chen tightened his arms around Jingyu and said in Jingyu's ear, If not, why would you be so heartless and push me away at the bottom of the sea? Xiao Chen. Jingyu's heart trembled slightly. She turned around and looked at Xiao Chen's face, which was terrifyingly calm. I almost thought I lost you. Xiao Chen tightened his arms around Jingyu. His dark eyes were so frightening. Jing Yu pursed her lips and didn't say anything. Do you think that everything will be fine as long as I'm alive? Xiao Chen raised his hand and rubbed Jing Yu's cheek. If I lose you, how do you expect me to live? Xiao Chen. Jing Yu's heart trembled violently. Because of Xiao Chen's words, her eyes were filled with shock. She looked up at Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen looked at Jing Yu and said, If I were you, would you be willing to push me away? Jing Yu suddenly tightened her grip on Xiao Chen's hand and refused without thinking. As soon as she said this, Jing Yu was stunned. Since she wasn't willing, how could she think that Xiao Chen was willing? Do you understand? Xiao Chen held Jing Yu's cheek and asked with narrowed eyes. Jing Yu looked at Xiao Chen. The corners of her mouth curled up and she nodded. This man was always like this. He didn't say anything, but he seemed to say everything. Life and death together really wasn't something that could be said. Jing Yu could almost clearly feel it. If she really died, Xiao Chen would definitely destroy the Ghost King's cave at all costs and come to accompany her. What a foolish man. Xiao Chen. Jing Yu looked up and called out Xiao Chen's name. Xiao Chen responded. Jing Yu just smiled and didn't say anything. It seemed that she just wanted to call out Xiao Chen's name. Xiao Chen's eyes softened slightly. He bent down and planted a kiss on Jing Yu's lips. When he was about to let go, Jing Yu raised her hand and took the initiative to wrap it around Xiao Chen's neck. Outside the house, it was pouring rain. Under the eaves, the rain was dripping. Chapter 674. Inside the house, the two of them kissed passionately and were so intimate and harmonious. Yuan Mingyuan, who was standing in the corner not far away, stood there quietly for who knows how long. The rain seemed to have soaked his clothes. He quietly watched the two of them talk. Every action and every expression was so harmonious. Jing Yu's kiss made Yuan Mingyuan's hand, which was hanging by his side, tighten slightly. In the end, he slowly lowered his head. The servant girl standing beside Yuan Mingyuan saw this scene and turned to look at Yuan Mingyuan. In the end, she sighed deeply. Young master, aren't you a pirate? Why didn't you snatch her? The servant girl looked at Yuan Mingyuan with a conflicted expression and asked, Why should I snatch her? Yuan Mingyuan was slightly taken aback. His clenched fists silently relaxed. At this moment, his heart seemed to beat abnormally for a moment. Young master, don't you like that girl? The servant girl said with hidden bitterness. Since you like her, why don't you just snatch her? You've already gotten her, yet you're giving her back. That's really not the style of a pirate leader. Ta. Yuan Mingyuan laughed softly. He turned his head slightly and looked at Jing Yu's back with a deep gaze. A strange feeling arose in his chest. He said faintly, Not everything can be snatched. Even if you snatch it, it doesn't mean it's yours. Since I've already snatched her, she's naturally mine. Isn't that so? The servant girl said with confusion. Let's go. Yuan Mingyuan lowered his head slightly and didn't say anything else. He turned and left. The servant girl's face was still filled with confusion. She couldn't understand her young master's thoughts. She silently followed behind Yuan Mingyuan and left. The night was dark. The heavy rain continued for the entire first half of the night. It finally stopped in the second half of the night. Jing Yu was annoyed by the sound of the rain and couldn't fall asleep at all. Finally, in the second half of the night, the rain stopped. Only then did Jing Yu feel sleepy. Just as Jing Yu was about to fall asleep in a daze, the originally quiet island was suddenly filled with hurried whistles, followed by the sound of gongs and drums. Jing Yu opened her eyes slightly. The quiet island was suddenly filled with noise. The army is attacking the island. The army is attacking the island. The shouts and the sounds of gongs and drums caused Jing Yu to sit up abruptly. Xiao Chen also got up. His expression was slightly cold. He quickly put on his clothes and strode to the door to open it. Two guests, the young master has already left the island. The army is attacking. Please calm down. The servant girl standing in front of the door seemed to be about to knock on the door. She had just raised her hand when she saw Xiao Chen open the door. She took a step back and bowed to speak. Xiao Chen replied indifferently. Seeing Jing Yu walking over after putting on her clothes, he turned to the servant girl and said, "We're leaving the island." But the young master said. The servant girl frowned, but when she saw Xiao Chen's cold expression, her body trembled and she bowed and said, "I'll find someone to bring you out." "Thank you." Jing Yu stood beside Xiao Chen and nodded slightly to the servant girl in thanks. Everyone on the island was busy. Countless figures stepped into the muddy pool and headed in a direction with all kinds of swords in their hands. Chapter 675. Xing Yi and Qin Ge finally found their way over. With 2 pirates leading the way, they brought everyone out of the cave and out of the island. At a glance, they could see countless ships floating on the surface of the sea. The torches on the ships were very bright. The entire sea was occupied by the ships. The people standing on the ships were all wearing armor. At a glance, one could tell that this was a regular army. Looking at the flag flying in the air, wasn't that the symbol of the Tokyo? Boss, our initial estimate is that there are at least 500 ships coming this time. If we count based on the number of people, then there are less than 80,000 Tokyo elite soldiers. The man covered in armor had a dignified expression as he stood beside Yuan Mingyuan and said, 80,000. Yuan Mingyuan's expression was heavy as he looked down at the densely packed ships. His heart trembled violently. Boss, why are there suddenly so many soldiers? It's not like they haven't been here before. At most, there were only a few dozen ships. Could it be that the military is planning to completely wipe us out this time? The people standing beside Yuan Mingyuan all had dignified expressions as they looked up at Yuan Mingyuan and asked. It's not because of you. An indifferent voice interrupted. Yuan Mingyuan turned his head and saw Xiao Chen and Jing Yu walking side by side. Behind them, Xing Yi, Qin Ge, and the rest of the people silently followed behind Xiao Chen and Jing Yu as they walked towards Yuan Mingyuan. TSK. Xiao Yi is really merciless. Jing Yu raised her head slightly as she looked at the sea and the corners of her mouth curled into a mocking smile. Yuan Mingyuan, do you see this? This is the result of not sending me out. I already said that if you keep me, I'm afraid that your island will be surrounded sooner or later. Jing Yu's mouth curled into a bright smile as she looked up at Yuan Mingyuan and said, It's too late to regret it now. Yuan Mingyuan's mouth curled up slightly as he said lightly, Pay, you still want to regret it now? Jing Yu looked at Yuan Mingyuan with disdain and said, We're on the same boat now. If you lose me, your boat will still capsize. Ha. Since that's the case, I'd like to see how my Ghost King cave will fare against 80,000 soldiers. Yuan Mingyuan's heart was on fire. As he looked at the numerous ships heading towards the Ghost King cave, his lips curved up in a cold smile. It's just 80,000 grasshoppers. Ghost King's Ghost Cave, how can we be afraid? Oh, well said. Grasshoppers are still grasshoppers are grasshoppers. Brothers, fuck these guys. Go into the water and capsize their boats. Because of Yuan Mingyuan's words, the group of people from Ghost King Cave suddenly shouted excitedly. They were clearly so weak, but at this moment, they displayed an incomparably strong spirit, shaking everyone's heart. Shouting one after another, Jing Yu, who was standing on the side, couldn't help but feel her heart burning. Yuan Mingyuan, your people are very good. Xiao Chen slightly retracted his gaze and looked at Yuan Mingyuan indifferently as he said, Nonsense, if my people aren't good, then would your people be good? Yuan Mingyuan quite bluntly retorted Xiao Chen. He looked at the approaching ships. One ship slowly sailed over, seemingly preparing to negotiate first. Young Master Yuan, long time no see. The person standing at the bow of the ship was quite burly and wore armor. He slightly raised his head to look at Yuan Mingyuan, who was standing high above, and raised his hand to cup his hands slightly. Chapter 676. I was wondering who it was. So it's General Lei. Yuan Mingyuan clearly knew this person. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he replied in a clear voice, Looking at this posture, General Lei wants to flatten my Ghost King cave. After all, we've been fighting here for several years. Does Great General Lei not plan to show mercy today? Whether or not I show mercy depends on young Master Yuan. The person called General Lei roared in a rough voice. Young Master Yuan, I heard that the criminal that the Imperial Court wants to arrest has run to your Ghost King cave. If you can hand over the criminal, this general guarantees that he won't touch your Ghost King cave in the slightest. Criminal of the Imperial Court? I think General Lei, you're mistaken, right? Everyone in my Ghost King cave is from my Ghost King cave. Yuan Mingyuan laughed and said, General Lei must be mistaken. Yuan Mingyuan, don't play tricks with me. The person I want to capture is the woman standing beside you. Because of Yuan Mingyuan's words, General Lei's face darkened slightly as he said coldly, if you want the people of my Ghost King cave to go with you, General Lei, you still have to show some ability. Yuan Mingyuan stood with his hands behind his back. He looked at General Lei with a faint smile and said, Brothers, send our General Lei back. Alright. As soon as Yuan Mingyuan's voice fell, a few heads suddenly popped out from the originally calm surface of the lake. They uniformly surrounded General Lei's boat. What do you want to do? General Lei looked at the person soaking in the water and immediately became nervous. His face flushed red as he looked at Yuan Mingyuan and angrily shouted, Yuan Mingyuan, don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. That woman is a monster. If we don't kill her, the world will be in chaos. What a great world in chaos. Jing Yu laughed heartily as she strode out and stood beside Yuan Mingyuan. She looked at General Lei indifferently and said, Turn around and look behind you. Who is the person who is stirring up the wind and stirring up a war? Let me tell you, even if the world is in chaos, it will be because of you. Jing Yu stood coldly on top of the boulder. Her pitch-black eyes instantly turned dark green. Those green eyes were dazzling in the dark night. The people have no way of making a living, and the people are plunged into misery and suffering. It was you who ignited the flames of war. My hands have not been stained with the blood of the people. Jing Yu looked at those people coldly. Her words were powerful and resonant. Everyone stared at Jing Yu with their eyes wide open. Yuan Mingyuan looked at Jing Yu, who was standing beside him, in shock. He stared at her wolf-like eyes for a long time, unable to return to his senses. Demon! General Lei, who was standing on the boat, saw the change in Jing Yu's eyes clearly. He was so scared that his face turned pale and he couldn't even stand steadily on the boat. Good for nothing. Jing Yu spat out these 3 words in disdain. Yuan Mingyuan raised his hand slightly. The person waiting in the sea received Yuan Mingyuan's order and quickly dived into the sea without hesitation. He shook General Lei's boat vigorously in the water. Splash! General Lei's huge body fell into the water under the violent shaking, creating a rather high splash. A drowning dog. Dog Lei is going home to find his mother. Chapter 677. Wave after wave of mocking laughter rang out. General Lei was flustered as he drank a few mouthfuls of water. Only then did he wretchedly swim in the direction of the large group of ships. Yuan Mingyuan's side laughed incessantly as they sent out a small boat to escort General Lei back. Since the negotiation didn't succeed, the next step was naturally the battle. Yuan Mingyuan was indeed the head of the pirates. His methods of fighting were endless. He didn't play by the rules at all. Just when you thought he would do something like that, he didn't do it. The pirates fought with incomparable difficulty, but their curses didn't decrease at all. The curses that came out of their mouths almost angered the opposing army to death. They were quite happy, but in the end, they were outnumbered. The number of injured people that were carried back increased rapidly. Use fire. Jing Yu was silent for a moment before saying indifferently, No, our arrows can't shoot that far. We can shoot at the front row of ships, but it's completely useless. They extinguished it in the blink of an eye. After Jing Yu finished speaking, Yuan Mingyuan didn't say anything. The one standing below Yuan Mingyuan spoke first. That means, we have to find a way to ignite it instantly. Jing Yu said with a slight frown. Looking at the water monkeys that dived into the water to kill people, she suddenly thought of an idea. You guys are quite good in the water, aren't you? To be able to drag someone back from so far away without needing to breathe, Jingyu said as she pointed at the person below. That's right. These are all monkeys in our hands. No one can beat them in the water. When that person heard Jingyu's question, he immediately puffed out his chest proudly and said, "If it weren't for these water monkeys, how could we dominate this part of the sea?" "I have an idea." Jingyu nodded with satisfaction and said, "Go take out all the wine on our island and let those water monkeys take it. Dive into the water and throw the wine jar onto a ship. Throw it onto any ship, the more the better." That person was slightly stunned and looked at Jingyu with a puzzled expression. Finally, his gaze landed on Yuan Mingyuan. "Do as she says." Yuan Mingyuan looked up slightly at Jingyu and nodded slightly. That person hesitated for a moment, but then gritted his teeth and agreed. He immediately shouted loudly and called a large group of people to carry the wine. Since they were going to throw it onto the ship, the wine jar naturally couldn't be too big, and ropes had to be hung to make it convenient for one person to carry a few. These people were also smart. Jingyu looked at those who were good at swimming. Each of them had 4 jars of wine hanging around their necks. It was effortless for them to swim. Some of the weaker ones carried 2 jars. Then, they dove into the water and swam towards the ship. "Bring the arrows." 2 longbows were brought over. Jingyu and Xiaochen looked at each other and smiled faintly. "It's close to dawn and the fog is very thick. You can't see the ship clearly. Let me light up the ship and you shoot the arrows." Jingyu tilted her head slightly and looked at Xiaochen. "With your ability, it should be more than enough, right?" Xiaochen nodded indifferently. "I'll do it too." Yuan Mingyuan also picked up a bow. Jing Lang and Xing Yi also picked up their bows and said, "We can't shoot those that are too far away, but we can shoot those that are closer." Chapter 678. All right, light the fire. A few people lifted the brazier and the arrows that they had prepared beforehand lit the brazier. Jingyu raised her longbow. Under everyone's gaze, Jingyu stood with her bow drawn. Her green eyes stared coldly in front of her. Jingyu could almost ignore the darkness of the night. In her eyes, she could clearly see the people in the water poking their heads out and throwing the wine jars in their hands onto the ships. Jingyu watched as the wine jars were thrown onto the ships and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. Under everyone's fervent gazes, the flaming arrows mixed with the cold air pierced through the ships in front of them and nailed themselves onto the ship that had just thrown the wine jars. The flames landed on the wine and lit it up. The moment the flames started burning, Xiao Chen's arrows followed suit. Yuan Mingyuan and Xing Yi were naturally not weak. One arrow after another flew past. In an instant, dozens of ships on the sea were set ablaze. Jingyu's eyes flashed with a golden light as though she was not tired. One arrow after another was shot. Every arrow that Jingyu shot out was set ablaze. Towards the end, Interrogation Officer 1 and Jing Lang both felt a little tired and stopped to rest. However, Jingyu didn't stop at all. Her action of raising her hand to shoot the arrow didn't even tremble. Yuan Mingyuan's heart was filled with shock. His arm was already aching. After enduring for a long time, he was finally defeated. In the end, only Xiao Chen and Jingyu were left. Every arrow that Jingyu shot out, Xiao Chen's arrow would follow suit. There was no deviation at all. The 2 people standing on the high platform shooting arrows caused the hearts of the people below to palpitate. Finally, when nearly 100 ships had been set ablaze, Jingyu slowly put down her hands. She raised her hand to wipe the sweat on her forehead and said, "Let's rest for a while. Let's continue." "Okay," Xiao Chen responded and put down the bow in his hand. He raised his hand to hold Jingyu's hand and gently massaged it. Xiao Chen helped Jingyu massage for a long time. Jingyu also raised Xiao Chen's hand and helped Xiao Chen massage. The 2 looked at each other and smiled. This harmonious action was so familiar that it was as if they had done it dozens of times. Yuan Mingyuan looked at Jingyu and Xiao Chen and his heart skipped a beat. He tilted his head and saw that the people were trying their best to put out the fire. They raised their hands to raise their bows and arrows and began a new round of shooting. The ships were very close together. A gust of wind blew the fire to the ships next to them. Even if they wanted to put out the fire, they were powerless. They helplessly jumped down and prepared to escape. However, they didn't know that if they jumped down, what awaited them was an even more merciless massacre. The water monkey, who was waiting under the water, was already itching. As long as it saw someone fall into the water, it would go up and stab them. The sea was almost dyed red with blood. The gray horizon was faintly white. The battle in the second half of the night was finally coming to an end. Jing Yu's plan was successful. She successfully made the army retreat temporarily. When the sun was completely up, the navy finally sounded the sound of the retreat. The people in Ghost King Cave cheered enthusiastically. The injured people looked at the navy leaving in a grandiose manner. They didn't seem to have regained their senses. They didn't expect that with just a few people, they would be able to beat back 500 ships. Now that they thought about it, it felt like a dream. Chapter 679. When they heard one person's cheers, they cheered enthusiastically. Jing Yu stood on the high platform and heard their cheers. Looking at the mighty army leaving, she finally breathed a sigh of relief. Yuan Mingyuan looked at Jing Yu with a different look in his eyes. Jing Yu didn't notice it at all. She looked at Xiao Qin and smiled. This intimate action, this enviable tacit understanding, all of this fell into Yuan Mingyuan's eyes. He tilted his head and shouted out to everyone to clean up the battlefield. He personally went down to comfort the wounded, and everyone returned to the island to rest for a while. Jing Yu and Xiao Qin washed up and rested for a while before heading to the front hall. Everyone was sitting in the hall. Yuan Mingyuan was talking to Wen Lin. When he saw Xiao Qin and Jing Yu come in, he looked up and greeted them with a smile. "How is the situation now?" Jing Yu didn't want to talk nonsense with Yuan Mingyuan and asked directly. "The situation is not very good." Yuan Mingyuan sat up straight and looked at everyone. He said, "Although Lei Jing retreated this morning, this is definitely not the end. It is just the beginning. I just received news that Jing Yu, the news that you are in the Ghost King Cave has been leaked. Now everyone is coming for you." "You mean the people from the other 3 countries are also on the move?" Jing Yu narrowed her eyes and asked coldly. "I haven't gotten the exact news from the other 3 countries, but the Jianghu is in an uproar. People from all sects and clans are flocking to Yangzhou. Among them, there are many people from hidden clans." Yuan Mingyuan said faintly. "We can't hide in the Ghost King Cave now. What do you plan to do next?" Yuan Mingyuan looked at Jing Yu and Xiao Qin and asked. Hearing this, Jing Yu was slightly taken aback. She turned her head and looked at Xiao Qin. Then Jing Yu frowned and said, "In the end, I am the one who has implicated your Ghost King Cave. How about this? You hand me over and leave, and don't interfere in this matter again." Jing Yu. As soon as Jing Yu finished speaking, Yuan Mingyuan's expression suddenly changed. He looked at Jing Yu with burning eyes and called out Jing Yu's name in an extremely deep tone. Jing Yu was slightly stunned. She looked at Yuan Mingyuan, not knowing what to say. "Have you forgotten? You and I are the same kind of people." Yuan Mingyuan took a deep breath and pointed at the eye mask he was wearing. "I'm tired of wearing this thing. I don't want to wear it anymore." As he spoke, Yuan Mingyuan raised his hand and took off the eye mask. His blood-red eye looked straight at Jing Yu and said, "With my current appearance, even if you really leave, do you think they will let me go?" "Huh." Jing Yu was amused by Yuan Mingyuan's shameless behavior. She said quite happily, "So, you are now asking for my protection?" Yuan Mingyuan calmly raised his eyebrows and smiled. Jing Yu heard Yuan Mingyuan's calm response. Her lips curled into a faint smile. She helplessly shook her head and said, "You could have lived a carefree life here. Why do you have to get involved in this? Yuan Mingyuan, if you step into this, you will not only face life and death. Didn't you ask me if I would be happy living like this? Now I can tell you, before I met you, I never thought about this question. Now that I think about it, I am not happy at all." Chapter 680. Yuan Mingyuan looked deeply at Jing Yu and said, "Hatred and unwillingness have been suppressed in my heart for too long. Jing Yu, Are you willing to help me take revenge and resolve this hatred? Yuan Mingyuan's eyes shined as he looked at Jingyu. The words he spat out stunned everyone present. Hatred needs to be taken with my own hands. Jingyu raised her chin slightly and said, only then can my hatred be resolved. If that's the case, then let's go. Jingyu stood up and looked at everyone as she said, I want to go to the Roman forest. That is where our battlefield will be. My companions have already gone to the Roman forest to wait for me. Okay, I'll go with you. Yuan Mingyuan's eyes lit up and he said with a smile. Jingyu raised her voice to refuse. Yuan Mingyuan's mouth immediately froze. Didn't they just say that they wanted to go together? Why did Jingyu change her mind in the blink of an eye? Everyone looked at Jingyu in confusion. Only Xiaochen calmly raised his eyebrows and smiled slightly. Okay, you can't go with us. Xiaochen also stood up and said, you have to hand us over. No, you have to hand me over. Jingyu looked up at Xiaochen and said calmly. Xiaochen's hand paused slightly when he heard this. Then his face instantly turned cold. He looked at Jingyu with a cold gaze and his heart jumped. He quickly comforted her and said, this is only a scheme, a scheme. I can escape from the hands of those people, and you have to use the identity of the enemy to cover your tracks and go to the Roman forest. No, I'll go with you. Xiaochen looked at Jingyu and said, Xiaochen. Jingyu frowned and stared at Xiaochen and said, you know me. I won't act recklessly. Xiaochen was determined not to allow Jingyu to act alone. He raised his hand and took off the mask on his face, revealing his handsome features. He raised his hand and threw the mask into Xing Yi's arms. Then he looked at Jingyu with a pair of black eyes and said, this way, I can go with you. You. Yuan Mingyuan's eyes instantly widened. He looked at Xiaochen in shock. Jingyu looked at Xiaochen's actions. She wanted to stop him, but she was powerless. For a moment, she was annoyed. She glared at Xiaochen and said, now that your identity has been exposed, how are you going to deceive those people? They know that the king of the Hell King of the sect has come to this island. How are you going to deceive them? They know that those people know, they know that the king of the Hell King of the sect has come to this island. What are you going to do when they see? Don't we still have Xing Yi? Xiaochen calmly turned his gaze to Xing Yi and said, no one has seen the king of Hell's face before. If Xing Yi wears the mask, who will be able to recognize him? Master. Xing Yi called out to Xiaochen in an aggrieved manner. However, Xiaochen shot him a sharp look. Xing Yi was immediately speechless. If that's the case, then let's do it. Jingyu spread her hands and said, when the next wave of people comes, Yuan Mingyuan, hand me and Xiaochen over. Make sure to put on a good show so that they will lower their guard against you. Then, take Big Brother and the others to the Roman forest through another path. Xiaochen and I will meet up with you. Is this really okay? Yuan Mingyuan asked with a frown, somewhat uneasy. Don't worry, I have my ways. Jingyu looked up at Xiaochen and said, besides, don't I have Xiaochen to protect me? Yuan Mingyuan narrowed his eyes and looked deeply at Xiaochen as he said, I really didn't expect the king of the Hell King of the sect to be the 9 emperors. Chapter 681. You already guessed it, didn't you? Xiaochen calmly raised his eyebrows and looked at Yuan Mingyuan as he spoke. I only dared to guess. Yuan Mingyuan faintly smiled and said, it's really surprising that it's confirmed. Xiaochen faintly smiled and didn't say anything. Only now did Yuan Mingyuan understand why Jingyu said that she loved the 9 emperors, but was so close to the king of hell. It even made Yuan Mingyuan think that Jingyu was two-timing. Fell in love with 2 people at the same time? It turned out that he was thinking too much. The person Jingyu loved from the beginning was Xiaochen. Everyone sat in a circle and discussed the next route and the things they needed to prepare. Yuan Mingyuan had subordinates, and with so many people, not everyone was willing to follow Yuan Mingyuan. Those who had families to feed were powerless even if they wanted to. Yuan Mingyuan still had a lot of things to do, and Jingyu and Xiaochen were discussing how to escape if they were really handed over. The two discussed many methods, but they didn't personally see the surrounding environment, and there were too many uncertain factors. So the two of them only thought about it and didn't think too much about it. 2 days of preparation was too rushed. On the third day, the retreating navy attacked again, but this time it wasn't just the army. On the island of the Ghost King Cave, Jingyu and Xiaochen stood on a high platform and looked at the fleet coming from afar with slightly frowns. I'm afraid the situation is not good. Yuan Mingyuan quickly walked over and said, according to the news, the people who came to attack the Ghost King Cave this time aren't just the Tokyo military. Many factions of the Jianghu are also involved. Originally, the factions of the Jianghu weren't allowed to interfere, but because the Hades sect's people are involved, and some people say that the sect leader of the Hades sect took away the person with the other eye, the factions of the Jianghu forcefully intervened. If the people in the imperial court don't allow it, I'm afraid there will be an internal conflict between the imperial court and the Jianghu. When Jingyu heard Yuan Mingyuan's words, her lips curled into a mocking smile as she said, if there really is a fight, then we won't have to worry. Just as the two factions were about to fight, the hidden clan's people showed up. It is said that the people's poisons this time are the poison sect's people, and the factions of the Jianghu came together. Are we still going to continue with the plan? Yuan Mingyuan clasped his hands behind his back as he looked at Jingyu and Xiaochen. He said, this is far too dangerous. Why don't we think of another plan? It's too late. Jingyu looked at the approaching ships and said, let's proceed according to the original plan. Yuan Mingyuan frowned slightly. He was about to say something when Xiaochen said, this is the best plan. Don't worry about me and Jingyu. Jingyu raised her head to look at Xiaochen. She curved her eyebrows and smiled, then walked toward the island. The show had just begun. In less than a quarter of an hour, the ships were already approaching the island of Ghost King Cave. Yuan Mingyuan could see them clearly from his high platform. This time, there were many chivalrous men dressed in casual clothes and wielding long swords on the ships. These were the people of the Jianghu. The ones standing on the ships in the middle were all dressed in black and red. Clearly, they were the poison sect. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.